Swampscott School Committee, regular session, Wednesday, March 27th at 7 p.m. For everybody who can, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have? Yay! Okay, our one and only, Mr. Doulette.
Hi, thank you. Joe Doulette, 148 Elmwood Road. I'm also a teacher at the high school. Just two quick things as a follow-up to Sammy's film, which we watched a couple of weeks ago. She submitted that film to the Salem Film Festival 5-minute student documentary contest, and it got accepted in. And so it'll be screening this Saturday morning at 10 a.m.
That's awesome.
At the Cinema Salem. So she's beside herself.
Oh my gosh.
But she'll still only let her mom come. She won't let her dad come.
A nice write-up in the
Yeah, it was in the
Reporter.
Reporter. It was fantastic. I didn't even know they did that.
Yeah.
The other announcement I want to make, which is related, is the Blue Big Band, which I received a grant from the Swampscott Cultural Council, is having its performance on April 27th. And I'm noting it here because it was open to anyone in the community to participate. We have 17 band members, and 5 of them are directly related to the schools. Amy Kammeyer is playing flute, Steven Silbert is playing guitar, Olivia Chavez, a student, is playing sax, Isaac Drieben is playing bass, and I'm playing trombone. So there's a really nice school presence on the band. So if anyone's interested in coming to that concert, it's April 27th at the First Church at 1:30. So thank you very much.
Nice.
You have
Good stuff. Good stuff. And next we have Ms. Kiko Zoll. Welcome back.
First Church 1:30 on the 27th.
Good evening, thank you. My name is Keiko Zoll. I'm a Nason Road resident, and I just wanted to make a comment about 2 quick things. First thing, I had said this to Superintendent Angelakis privately, but I just wanted to publicly thank the school committee and the school building committee for the new school building idea exchange. I attended. It was great to see so many folks there and to just hear the exchange of ideas for our schools. It was very inspiring. And also, I really appreciated the thoughtful consideration to include kids into the dialogue as well. And I think I would just like to encourage the school committee and the school building committee to consider on a deeper dive those lists from the kids, because there was just a lot. I think if you read between the lines, there's a lot of themes there. I also would love to have Mookie Betts also come to the unveiling of a new school. That'd be great. And then the other thing I just wanted to comment about was, I know it's been a big, there's been a lot happening in the State House with regard to Chapter 70 public school funding from the state level, so I'm really encouraged to see that there's something, hopefully, something about that on tonight's agenda, just because I know it's an issue in our schools. And also, just if folks aren't already aware that there is also potentially a drastic federal funding cut in education that could be coming down the pike, as Secretary DeVos has announced basically $7 billion in education funding cuts, and I'm sure we've heard snippets of it on the news, but I just wanted to kind of put that on people's radars as well. So, thank you.
I'll add to that and really put all of the kudos to Suzanne, to your committee, the school building committee, which is not the school committee.
Right. So the school building committee was responsible for the idea exchange, and really, personally, it was a subcommittee, a communications subcommittee that was made up of Jen Hunt, principal at Clark School, Katie Porter Roberts, teacher in the middle school, Christina Colella, a parent who also happens to be a principal at another elementary school, and David Zucker, who's a parent in town of young kids and on the planning board. So the 4 of them really put that on with all of the rest of us sort of supplementary help.
Yeah.
But yeah, kudos to them for sure.
And public comment. So tonight,
Yes.
starting with you, I want to first apologize and say that I have been remiss in giving our student reps the floor for what they deserve. And I know recently in particular I have skipped over you, and I apologize. So
I accept your
tonight,
apology.
so we have had a great conversation, and tonight it's game on, and I know that
I'm afraid to hear what's coming.
I'm excited to hear what's
Yeah, make it
coming, so
good.
bring it on.
Well, the first thing I have to say is I mean, Miss Angelakis, you probably received emails about it already, but the thing with the YouTube and keeping it G only, in my class for AP Art History, we were watching a comparison for like some AP Art thing about the Bayeux Tapestry against Sanjiao Palace, and I think it was not rated G because maybe there was some violence in it, but we couldn't watch it. I know some of the YouTube videos for the school account are a little bit above rated G. We're not able to watch those anymore. And for race and ethnicity, some of the content, because there's violence in it, is also unwatchable.
But there is.
Could you give us
Yeah.
just some
Yes.
some background, because most people don't know.
Well, apparently I didn't hear all the information about it, but there was an incident at either the middle school or the elementary school involving watching videos that were not appropriate. So I think that you had I forget her name, but Miss Mackey.
Mackey
or
took
Miss
it upon
Knowles
herself in the
to-
technology
yes,
department
to fix
to
that.
put filters and to limit access. However, there is a plan that if teachers are going to show content at the high school.
They have an override
They can
thing?
be overridden.
Oh, that's
So
good.
that you're not going to be limited to just G videos, but it has to be, we want it to go really tight first, and then have the teachers approach the tech department and say, you know, for this week, I'm doing this unit, I want these videos unlocked, and they can be overridden. So we were not limiting the high school access, high school student access. What we were limiting is kids that are supposed to be doing other things on computers and are Googling YouTube videos that are inappropriate for school. So we're not really censoring you guys, we're just trying to control it a little better.
Probably not just inappropriate for school, just inappropriate in general.
Well, inappropriate. Inappropriate in general, but there is an override so that your teachers will have access to the content that they need to teach their classes effectively. Thank you for bringing that
Yeah,
to
I
our
was making
attention.
sure.
Yeah?
And then secondly, besides that, I know the middle school has updated water fountains. I feel like getting that would also help push maybe more people to bring reusable water bottles and also make it a bit more of a green place here.
There's a couple, and they're very popular at the middle school, the filtration
Yeah.
water bottle fillers, so that's something that is on our radar.
And then aside from that, maybe some SAT prep. I know not everyone has the financial stability to be able to pay for the courses or maybe even tutors. I went with Summit, and they do offer there is obviously a fee, but they offer to do course training at the school. So I don't know, maybe some more SAT prep stuff would be good.
Access to it, yeah, you and I were talking about that at the Idea Exchange. I think that's a great idea.
Do you think that there are students who are missing out because of finance?
Yes, and maybe I feel like there's also the portion of students that sign up for the SAT but don't do any prep before it. And they're stuck paying all that money.
Maybe having it on site is easier to get to for
Yeah, I
people
was
as
just gonna
well.
say, it's hard to get to some of the prep centers that aren't local
Right.
or tutors.
And aside from that as well, there was some school idea to build one of the schools in the haunt. For some reason, someone threw that out. Just no. That would whatsoever.
I was in that room
The
when that
causeway
happened.
for
I
the
was there as well.
traffic, everyone going down and up there just sounds awful.
Isaac, don't hold back, you never do.
How do you feel?
No.
Yeah, there was some discussion about,
The causeway.
about regionalizing with Nahant, which incidentally is a town with a significantly declining population in students. So I don't,
That's not part of
Yeah.
the scope of this project,
Well,
correct?
it can't be because we don't have a regionalization
Right.
agreement with them. So
Right.
it's
So
just,
let's
it's a
Right.
non-issue because we don't have a regionalization agreement. If we'd had a regionalization agreement, we could have talked to them about sharing elementary school resources, but we don't have an agreement, so it's
Right.
not even on the table.
just no.
Anything else?
He had so much,
I
he
know.
had two,
I know,
not
it wasn't
one,
even
but
written down. He
two,
did that right off the cuff.
not one, but two.
Well, no, I wrote some suggestions in the suggestion box, so.
From the Idea Exchange, he
Oh,
was
I saw
stuffing that,
I
yes.
saw your suggestions.
Yes. All right.
And thank you for your
Thank
help
you.
with our kids.
Yes.
Well, I wasn't really too focused on them. I was in the session meetings, but I did try and, I told them to add some safety features on their
Well, that's what I'm
list.
talking about. You were
yeah.
involved with
The
them.
go-kart wasn't your idea?
No.
Go-kart track, that was an awesome idea.
It was funny seeing them say, we'd like to have classes with like 15 to 10 kids. I'm like, that's not going to happen. We're not a private school.
But you're on the school committee now. That's not happening.
That's so funny.
It's funny.
Oh,
I
you're
love
funny.
you, Isaac.
Okay.
That's it for
That's
today.
That's it for today.
All right.
Let's see, so I also attended the idea exchange. I thought it was fantastic. I want to thank the town for coming up with that idea, because that was modeled after them. Martha, I have to say, the room that you were in, I thought you did a really awesome job moderating. I think people were really pleased with how that was going. The ideas are really impressive, like the one with, thinking about buying the temple, Sherratt, and, buying them and giving them Hadley oceanfront view, and we'll swap with you for the land. Like, I love that idea. I was like, let's do that, it was really, really cool to just listen to all these great ideas. And I also did hear the Nahant one, which I was also like, ooh, that's interesting concept, travel-wise. So thank you, Suzanne, and to your committee for putting that on, because that was great. I had some questions about the internet stuff and what was going on, so I think you said you were gonna
I am going to
mention
address that, yeah.
And, I think that's all I had today.
Karen?
I'll also thank the members of the building committee that put that on. I tried to attend as a resident and not a school committee member because I wanted to say things as well. But the moderators did a great job, and I kept hearing a lot of the same themes over and over, so I think it was helpful. I think if we could even do it again and get more people involved, that would be fantastic.
I think that there was great ideas, and I think a lot of the things that were said are going to help our OPM selection team. I mean, I'll talk about this in the update, but I think some of those things will help, and I think that once we get started in the feasibility study, I mean, we have to do all sorts of public forums, so we'll continue to do them for sure. Yeah.
Oh, can I actually add to that, Suzanne?
Sorry.
Cool. Yeah. So one thing I did hear it was this room, which I think is a takeaway, is like there's just so much, as we know, on social media that's inaccurate, right? And so I just feel like, I don't know, we have the links to the page, which everything is updated on there, correct? So I feel like, are we allowed to do that? Are we allowed to just keep putting that link out there just to make sure people are actually getting the facts? Because people are spinning on social media with stuff
So for all the spinning on social media, I haven't had a single email. Like, no one has emailed me a single question or concern, or anyone from the building committee. Right. So no one's even tried to get. I just think it's just so hard right now because the whole project is so ambiguous, because we truly don't know what we're going to build. We have 3 different configuration options from the MSBA that we have to look at, and we don't know what we're going to build yet. So all the dialogue right now really is a lot of spinning.
So let me just stop you, because we do have it later in the agenda, and I just want to make sure that we keep all of the information together, because you do
that's
have
fine.
a lot to update.
Right, that's fine.
So, sorry. Anything else?
No.
Okay.
I would just say a couple of points, and not to take away from the superintendent's report, but the weather machine is super cool.
Super cool.
Can you talk
The
about
robotics
it?
team
It's on my report.
Oh, okay.
was also in the news lately. And I have a couple of other things, but I'll just close. During the idea exchange, Mr. Green and I sat in here, and he made a statement that was pretty chilling to me. It made my hair stand up, and it was that he just wanted to be safe, the students safe in a building for school security. And unfortunately, we have to think of it in regards to someone coming into a building and wanting to harm the students, but hearing it from a student, we do hear it frequently, but for some reason, that day, I appreciate what you said, and it means a lot coming from yourself.
Thank you.
I have one thing to add, which is an announcement that the high school drama and music department is putting Sweet Charity on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, April 4th, 5th, and 6th at 7 p.m. For those of you who have not been to the shows, the annual shows, they are fabulous. So I highly recommend getting your tickets. And with that, we're going to move into the superintendent's report.
Okay, so to piggyback on what Mr. Delano was saying, our robotics team has done phenomenal. They were in competitions for the last 2 weekends. The first weekend, they were in Reading, and they finished in 9th place, and they had a tiebreaker in the quarterfinals. Last weekend, they were in Revere, and they lost in the semifinals and came in 3rd place. They are waiting to hear if they will be invited to the district championship at WPI, which would be April 10th through 13th. And if they are invited, there is a $4,000 entry fee that I will beg, borrow, and steal from the operating budget to find a way to get them to go. Super excited. They have a really phenomenal robot this year, and it's very, very exciting to see how well they're doing and how invested those kids are and how proud we are of that team. So they are doing fantastic. But my formal report that you have in your folders on the computers, I did start out reviewing the Director of Teaching and Learning. There is a section in blue that just was my last report, and it talked about the initial phases of the interview process for the Director of Teaching and Learning. And about midway down, it starts with, we ended up interviewing 11 candidates in round 1. Of those 11 candidates, 4 were moved forward to round 2. We had an interview committee change-up, which was really valuable to have the people with the boots on the ground part of this round 2 interview. So Ms. Mackey was still on round 2, but Mr. Kohut, Mr. Kalishman, Ms. Arden, who is a literacy teacher and a content lead, Mrs. Porter Roberts, who is our STEM consulting teacher and a content lead, and Mrs. Susan Sheehan, who's a grade 1 teacher and a content lead, were also on the committee. And it was invaluable to have them running those interviews. They do use a rubric with questions, so I was able to access all of the questions, all of the answers, all of their comments. We had the candidates in round 2 do a writing prompt. I was also able to access those writing prompts within the Google Drive and read through them. So we have identified finalists, and those finalists will be moving forward for interviews with me one-on-one. And so the decision, an announcement and recommendation will be coming out in the next few weeks, I would say.
Exciting.
High school assistant principal, Mr. Murphy kind of summarized to his staff, and I took these notes from that there is currently an interview committee consisting of 2 students, 2 parents, 4 teachers. I've identified in my report the various teachers, like a content lead, a special education teacher, a union rep, also the METCO director and dean of students. There were 51 applicants on School Spring, and the Human Resources Department is conducting some phone screening interviews, and they're looking to narrow down to about 10 candidates to bring forward to that committee. The timeline was today. There was an organizational meeting, the way I understand it. The first round of interviews will be April 1st, 3rd, and 5th, and then the final interviews with Mr. Murphy and Mr. Kohut would be the week of April 8th through 12th. So that process is moving along as well.
It seems like we're getting more applicants than we
Could it
have over
be
the last couple of
that
years.
we're a blue ribbon, national blue ribbon school district now?
But they're good candidates, too.
They're strong. I think the pool we had, I can't speak for the assistant principal, but I can say the pool of candidates we had for the Director of Teaching and Learning was impressive. Martha, would you agree? Yeah, I was
Really
impressed.
good to hear.
That's
Yeah.
awesome to hear.
The next item is something that we have done as a district since my days back at the building level as Stanley School principal. And it dawned on Mrs. Karen and myself that perhaps we should be sharing it with all of you. It is also in your folder on the computers. It's an annual report that we're required to share with the town from the school department. And it's funny how we've done this year after year after year, and all of a sudden, as I'm getting ready to share this with you tonight, I'm thinking, wow, this format needs changing, this can be improved 100 times over, but this basically is a report. So looking to the future, I think we're now at a place that we can have somebody and central office or somebody take the lead and reformat this. But it talks about the new hires, it talks about where they're located, it talks about the events broken down by school that have occurred through the year. So this is the report for 17-18, and as I said, it does get submitted to Sue Duplin, which by the town bylaws gets submitted in one big annual report to everybody. But it has the new hires, the resignations, the no longer employed, which are resignations, or the reassignments, the retirements. So it's a pretty comprehensive document that we just automatically send to them every year, but I do think we could do a better job at formatting. So that'll be a summer project. We'll figure that out. But it's interesting to read through because a lot of times we talk about here what the community service things that kids are doing, but everything is broken down: community service, culture and climate programs, enrichment programs, grade by grade. So when you look through it, it's impressive what gets done throughout the district. So that gets submitted to the town.
And who puts this together?
The principals put it together at their building level, submit it to Mrs. Karen, and Mrs. Karen puts it together. When Mrs. Karen and I were both at Stanley, we just submitted our portion. But looking at now being on the board of directors at the North Shore Education Consortium, I think we can step up our
That
game.
annual report was
Right, I know,
like,
step up our
right.
game on this one. I kind of had the two of them side by side on my desk. I'm
Yeah.
thinking, yeah, okay, time to revisit this. Anyway, it's on my to-do list.
It seems, Ted, like maybe this would be something that would be good for what you're working on with the real estate, having something that, to have like a condensed version of this as something that the real estate offices could be using.
It's a nice thing to have a few copies at the library, like just in the resource area for people to look at.
It's impressive when you sit through and read it. Next item in my report are just some school and classroom visits that I've been doing. Obviously, the Clark School Read Across America Day was a blast. And I read The Mermaid by Jan Brett to Mrs. Brum's second grade class. And it was interesting because I didn't get the book till that morning. All of us were previewing our books before we read them. And it was basically a mermaid version of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. And so the fun part, it was just so much fun to be back in the classroom. And I was talking about Jan Brett being one of my favorite authors because I would love to color her pictures because I find coloring very relaxing. So the students sent me a blank page of Jan Brett's cover with their little thank you notes, and they're like, "Here, we want you to color this." It was great. And way back, because it seems like I haven't been here. I did do a middle school visit, a classroom visit with Mr. Kalishman, and it was a scavenger hunt, I believe with a fifth grade class and Mrs. Moltz and library class, and I was so impressed with her ability to get the kids moving, working in teams, collaborating, and yet learning. So her objectives of the lesson were to reinforce how to use the online catalog system within the library, but also reinforcing the genres and where the genres were located within the library. It was a great lesson. The kids loved it because they were running around left and right, and it was a good way to burn off energy, but the mission was accomplished and her objectives were met in a very, very creative way. So that was a great visit. And then most recently, I was visiting and actually invited up to Miss Moore's fifth grade science class. And apparently when they redid the teams in fifth grade this year, she got the research project. And to have a research project with 80 students is quite a feat. And she will admittedly say that she was a little anxious about it. But this was a phenomenal project. So I got to go up and see the presentations. What they were researching was a person or an organization that's having a positive impact on the environment. And so every child did a research project in collaboration with the library class, and obviously Mrs. Moltz took them through the process. But what was impressive is that a lot of these kids went beyond their research paper. They created slideshows. They reached out to the companies that they wrote about. And one student in particular that I was able to see what happened is it was a cardboard furniture company. And so the student had written about how she was doing a presentation on this, and she really thought that they should look into cardboard sunglasses, And the letter I saw back, or the email I saw back from the owner of the company, took a picture of himself with his prototype of the cardboard sunglasses. So, I mean, you talk about an all-encompassing research project, real world, that had these kids learning about different things. It just was, there's great things happening. And great. Yeah, and it was amazing. So I just wanted to highlight those.
You were in the classroom.
I was in the classroom.
Yay, that's what we like to hear.
Well, I shouldn't say this publicly, but I went in early and the kids were switching classes and like, oh, we have a substitute. I'm like, oh. And they're like, oh, sorry, Miss Angelakis.
How am I going to misbehave today?
I changed my hair color. They didn't recognize me. And then my final pitch today is about SEF's honoring the memory of Joe Trebendez with this high school weather station. And I included on your annual report the actual link so you can see the information on the website. And then I just included in the report some pictures. Joe Trebendez's name is on the weather station with the SEF apple, and then a couple of pictures of it being mounted or having been mounted on the roof of the high school. And it's quite an accomplishment. It's quite an honor in the memory of Joe. I knew Joe both as a parent of children at Stanley School and then worked closely with him at SEF, and I know, Suzanne, you were on that board for a long time with him. So it's great, SEF was really behind this project, and it's great to finally have it coming to life. So
I would like to add a little bit to that, because there was, I saw a little bit of controversy online about the naming rights for this, and why it wasn't named after a longtime professor or teacher at the high school. And I think it is important to note that, this was a gift from the Education Foundation, which was led by Joe.
Yep.
And, this was a project from the heart of the people at the Education Foundation. Mm-hmm. So it was, it's not a slight to anybody, but just honoring somebody who did a lot of work for the benefit of the school.
Absolutely. So that concludes my report. The next item under my agenda is to review and adopt the high school program of studies. And am I calling both Mr. Kohut and Mrs. Barnum up here? Or one or the other? Emily's like, sure.
Dennis is really like Beyonce.
Yes, I can.
Backup dancer.
Oh, okay. You already had your Beyonce moment with us, which was incredibly well received.
Okay, so hold on, I'm trying to find this on.
Meanwhile, I went home and was hammering my 17-year-old daughter, soon-to-be 17-year-old daughter, about, have we done all this?
I know supposed to do that. That was the opposite information you got.
You gotta go up. I know.
Oh, no, you got it.
Okay. It's also how, like how I sort versus how you sort. Gotcha.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Good, low-key.
Before I get started, just want to take some time to give a huge shout out to our tech team, to our teachers, our proctors, guidance, and our students for today's
I forgot to talk
MCAS.
about that. Do you want to talk about it? What happened today?
I just want to say it went really well, all things considered. It was our first computer-based ELA test. It's now required by the state, and everything went really well. So a huge shout out to those folks for putting it together.
So there is a side story to this, and I'm sorry, I didn't, no Post-it note, no memory. So what happened is, I don't know if people have heard about the issue over in the Lynn Public Schools. So what's been occurring from our perspective is there's all kinds of hackers getting in. And Ms. Seibert got an email from me the other night that basically was, they're getting more clever. Some of them you can immediately tell are not from our accounts. The one that Ms. Seibert got the other night from me had my picture from my Google account and was from my Google account and told her to transfer or pay a bill to a vendor for a substantial amount of money. And so Mrs. Mackey Knowles has been, and the whole tech department has been all over these and like, do not open them, do not do anything, delete. They're having a hard time finding the virus. Well, apparently this virus hit Lynn. This is my very limited knowledge of this. because people were opening the emails, and they have shut down their internet for the last several weeks, and this is impacting their computer-based testing and MCAS. So today, I believe the 9th, 11th, and 12th graders were coming in at 10:30 to test, and they had already started answering some questions.
So the 10th graders only took the test,
Okay.
and the day was supposed to begin at 10:30
Okay.
for all the other students.
Okay. So we had an internal internet issue, and it wasn't related to this other virus. And so we had to delay testing by like an hour, but Department of Education was here to observe the way that we do testing, because Ms. Mackie Knowles has been very involved with those webinars that have occurred at the Department of Education. So they were here observing how we do it, and they stay calm, cool, collected. She texted me and said she's more confident. They were here, they didn't get frazzled, everything was fixed, and it went off without a hitch. So, but it was an internal issue, it was not the same
That
situation that occurred in Lynn.
Okay.
But a good thing to happen, I would imagine, while they're here.
Well,
It's the
now
facts-
they're.
It's the way things operate.
It's the way things are, yep,
Yeah,
so
for them to see it.
congratulate.
Something that's-
Yes,
Because it's a
people
new
respond.
requirement
Right.
that's hard to,
right, it was great, so, sorry about that, Mr. Kohut, go
Oh,
ahead.
no worries. So what I'll do is I'll just highlight some of the key changes. There aren't a lot in the program of studies, and then obviously open it up for questions. I just want to say thanks for reading it, and for those of you who sent along emails, questions and commentary. We did make some changes to reflect some of those, but not all. So the first change, we added in our core values. And when I first received the email, I thought, that can't be right. Our core values are definitely in there, but they weren't. So I added in the core values. Now, these are the core values. This is the Imagine statement that we've had for a decade now. And I think it's important that it's in there, but it's also important to note that as part of this process with NEASC, we will be changing our core values as we go through this. It'll probably be something, well, I know it will start next year, but a goal being by the end of next year, we would have some different core values. And it's all rooted in what's called this vision of a graduate. So what are the core kind of competencies that we want a Swampscott High School graduate to have? And that's what we'll base our core values on. But our current core values are here, so we added those in. I'm a slow scroller, I apologize. Graduation requirements, there's a significant change here in that we added personal financial literacy as a graduation requirement for students who are graduating in the class of 2023. I think we're all aware, we all probably know young people who have tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt. Many of these kids are making decisions to take out a lot of money in loans without understanding what that means and how that impacts their future. So this curriculum will focus on things like student loans, but also mortgages, budgeting, interest rates, that sort of stuff. In fact, one of the teachers, and the teacher who will teach this next year, Ms. Comparato, went to a financial literacy conference, I believe it was last weekend in San Francisco. So she's bringing back some of the things that she learned and adding those to the financial literacy curriculum. So we're excited for that.
It's exciting.
And then what I'll do is I'll just go through some of the new courses. There are not many. So I'll begin with English. I just want to get it up here. So in English, we've added, or the English department added, a college preparatory level English for freshmen. And this is based on some data over the past few years where they noticed a trend and they felt as though these particular students, there's a group of students who just aren't ready skill-wise for the ACP level. And they need a little bit more work on close reading, writing, grammar and usage, and vocabulary development. So these are kids who aren't necessarily on an IEP or an ed plan. These are typically gen ed kids who need a little bit more time to sort of get up to speed so they can take that ACP class in the sophomore year. Also in English, we have a new elective, which will be taught by Mr. Reed, and that's right here, Media in the 2020 Presidential Primaries. Mr. Reed, in 2016, during the presidential election, he taught a class, Media in the 2016 presidential election. So this is a sort of a reboot of that for this, this election cycle, but obviously it's a little bit different because he's also teaching about the primaries, and that class in 16 focused on the general election. That was a popular class in 16, so we anticipate that this will be popular as well.
Can I audit?
Sure. In the arts, give me a minute to scroll here. Well, actually, I should mention in science, the best named course in the entire program of studies is a new course, and that is Great Diseases, which is being offered. That's a study of diseases, epidemics, the science behind it, that will run as a semester elective next year. All right, so in visual arts, we have a few new classes. Our first AP, from what I understand, in the visual arts, we are offering, it's an AP, it's AP 2D Studio Art. The teacher is very passionate about this, and she is interested in taking the AP Summer Institute this summer to be certified to teach it. So assuming that she does that and goes through with all the coursework, if enough kids enroll, this class would run next year, which would be our first AP for visual arts. We also have, let's see, digital portfolio development and mixed media 1. Those are also new courses.
When you talk about portfolio development, is it specific to art portfolio, or is it sort of a broad look at academic portfolio?
So they're doing, from what I understand, it's more Photoshop sort of stuff, using technology.
Some of the programs and majors that students will apply to require a portfolio as part of their application process, so that will kind of help at least give them a really solid jumping off point too.
And I think that would be for kids who are going into maybe graphic design, that sort of stuff, right?
Architecture, right?
Sure. And then finally, in music, performing arts, we've added a music technology course, and this came from a group of kids who are interested in this sort of thing. So music technology is making music by, I think, kind of non-traditional means, so using things like GarageBand or software that can make beats. There were some kids who were interested in that. They approached Mr. Roby. He approached me. I said, why don't you sketch something out, write up a course description. He did that. So I do think we have a core group of kids who are interested in that sort of thing. So that's another course that we'll be running. So those are our new courses. Do folks have questions about program of studies? Yeah.
My brain paused a little bit when you were on the great diseases. To get back on the finance end of things, what is the, like student loans? I think that's great. What is the class that we're looking at for that?
The person.
Juniors?
Oh, yes, so it would be, for a requirement, it'll be class of 2023.
2023.
They'll be required to take it. There's a handful of kids who, we're phasing out the computer applications class. Next year will be the last year that it runs.
Typing, right?
So there are a handful of kids who will still need to take that.
Yeah, sorry.
About-
That was going to be my next question.
Kids who still need to take that, they'll take that. Other kids could also sign up for financial lit as an elective, but it wouldn't yet be required. And then in subsequent years, it will be a requirement.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic.
Great, thank you.
Congratulations,
Yeah.
because we've been working on that since
For a long
I sat,
time.
I sat in this seat. And the fact that we are moving from something so basic to something that is usable, in the
Real
future.
life,
In real life.
practical
It's just,
use.
I'm
Yeah.
so excited by that. That's a huge accomplishment. So kudos.
Thanks.
So my question dovetails off of that, which is what, if anything, have you dropped or are phasing out?
So, well, we're phasing out computer apps. So last year will be the last year that runs. You kind of caught me flat-footed with that question.
Sorry.
I apologize.
Sorry, I should have.
Did we lose a few sections of Algebra 2 or I bet there was some
We
discussion
had
Some
four
about.
discussion
sections
around-
of Algebra 1. Do we still?
Controversy about the
Right.
middle school and the high school not jiving. I know Mrs. Condike had been working on that a little bit, like trying to like sort of pare that down or make it.
Last year, we reduced from 4 sections of Algebra 1 to 3.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was looking ahead to this year, actually. I put together what I've picked up from her responsibilities, but I dropped the ball on that one. So do we have 4 sections of Algebra 1 in here? If we do, we do.
I'd have to look.
Okay.
I know that Anne Marie, that was something that they had discussed.
Yes,
but
with the
from my
department chair.
understanding
Can't
from
remember
Anna
if it was
Montero, there
happening.
weren't really any dramatic changes in mathematics.
Okay.
So I don't think anything's changed, but
Okay.
I'll have to look and see.
Look now.
I have
Okay.
a question. So
Yeah.
as you roll out these new courses, how do you define if they were successful and if you're gonna keep them? Like,
Well, I think it's gonna, with the electives, it starts with enrollment, right? How many kids are taking them? And I think the teachers also, I think we have to, for some of these classes, give it a little bit of time, and it can't just be like a one-year thing, because
Right.
there's a little bit of tweaking that goes along with that. I think for other courses that are more academic, I think like, for example, that CP English class, we can look at objective measures, like we can look at MCAS scores, we can see, did it improve that? Are kids doing better now in that sophomore one, ACP class
right,
versus before? So
connecting the one to the next level to see.
yeah, and again, that's also contingent upon numbers. If not many of the rising freshmen take that class, then it won't run. But we do feel like there's a need for it, and we do think that population is sort of growing. So I think with classes like that, we can look at it in a more kind of traditional way, whereas with the electives, I think it's gonna be, a lot of it's gonna be based on, are kids signing up for these courses, right? Is it bringing sort of vibrancy to the school?
So what happens with a teacher, for example, the AP studio art class? You had said, with the hopes that obviously enough kids sign up for it. What happens with it if, obviously the easy answer is that the class doesn't happen if not enough kids sign up for it. But then what about those resources in terms of bodies? The teacher who teaches that? How does that reallocate?
So she would teach something else instead, and the goal would be next year, because I do think it would be a great class, would be just to sell the heck out of it over the course of next year.
Yeah.
So that gives her some time now to sell it over the course of the year, so that more kids enroll.
Mr. Kohut, if you just flip back to the mathematics courses.
Yes.
It looks like there are only 3 sections of Algebra 1.
Okay.
There is,
Tell them what page.
it is on page 30 of the version I printed out.
Okay.
But I noticed it's different than the one in the online. There is a college prep, an advanced college prep, and option 1, an advanced college prep, option 2, accelerated college prep, advanced college prep, and college prep. So we must have, according to what I have. So we reduced by 4 to 3, and that may have been the results of the conversation with the department chair, Mrs. Condike.
Sure.
So that did occur.
I think that's what it was last year.
Yes, so maybe that's why she mentioned no changes, but that's great. That's great news.
So can I ask, are we concerned if, I think it's great to put in what you need for a freshman class if you're feeling that the kids are not prepared, but are we looking at the connection between the middle school
Yes.
to the high school with that and what the kids may not be getting, or?
I don't want to speak for Mr. Kohut, but I know they've worked more closely, Mr. Kohut and Mr. Kalishman, so I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, it's a conversation that we've had a little bit. I think we'd need a little bit more data to have kind of a deep dive and see like what are the specific skills that these kids need to improve upon. But I think it's something that we can talk about. I also think it's something that the department chairs need to talk about. I believe they have, Ms. Thomas, and I'm not sure who the grade 8 ELA department chair is. I know they've talked about course selection. I know they've talked about leveling.
But it's about that vertical alignment
Yeah.
and making sure we have all the things in it that we need. And that vertical alignment work, they've continued without a director of curriculum instruction, but I do think that needs some oversight, and having a new director of teaching and learning oversee that will be helpful.
So like in other words, is it being fixed at the high school when it could have been fixed at the middle school?
Right.
Sure.
Yeah. I had some questions about the independent study course, the dual enrollment, just because so as a parent, I wouldn't know, how do you know what courses are available through this independent, like the North Shore, sorry, is it North Shore, Community College? Like, how would you know, I think I wrote that to you in my thing, like, is it AutoCAD? Like, what is it? And what, you know, what grade would you be looking at that
You want to
for?
speak to that?
Sure. So, hi, sorry. So the dual enrollment courses change every semester because they're college level courses. So just to get back up and give you like the 30,000 foot view, if a student signs up for a dual enrollment class, that means they're dually enrolled. They're both receiving credit for high school and also in college.
Hold on 1 second. I think they want to give you a microphone.
Here, just take Ted's.
Emily, do you want to
Just
just,
take Ted's, yeah.
Thank you.
Is that okay?
Yes. Is this okay that I have my back to,
Oh, he's still coming.
to home? Oh, sorry, okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
So I was just saying that if you are enrolled in a dual enrollment program, and there are a number of, oh my God, colleges and universities that offer students the opportunity to be able to go do that, you do receive credit in both high school and college. Thank you. I told you I was a backup dancer, not Beyonce. So they change every semester because they're college level courses. So they publish them closer to the registration time. So like we could link to a course catalog, but basically students who are upperclassmen might find out about a dual enrollment course either on their own or through a conversation with their counselor, and they might say, I'm really interested in taking more psychology classes, or I've heard about sociology and I had a friend take it at North Shore. Is that available to me? Or I've heard about a CAD program. We can go on and look at the course catalog at either North Shore. We used to have access to Salem State, but actually they just notified us that we will no longer be a participant in their dual enrollment program, unfortunately. They're prioritizing their funds for students who are low income and first gen, and I guess based on their information, they don't feel like we meet any of their criteria. So I think that's unfortunate for our students, just because of location and the number of students who actually do look at Salem State. But so the way that it works also is that it's covered by the state if funds are available. So typically, I've never seen it not covered. So students will receive the funds for the entirety of the class for one class per semester per student, which is awesome. So and get the credit for it, both college and high school. So you sign up for it. The counselor has to sign a form. The student sign the form. As long as the classes are available and open, then the student can take the class. We receive the transcript from the institution. We add it to the student's transcript. The state of Massachusetts does suggest that we put it on their transcript and that we calculate it into the GPA. So if a student takes like a summer enrichment class that's, I don't know, like a 5-week course at MIT, it may be particularly rigorous, but we wouldn't necessarily be putting that on a transcript. So that would be something that would require like prior approval from a department chair and/or administration.
How many students of ours participate in this?
In dual enrollment, it depends year to year. So anywhere between 3 and 12. A couple years ago, we had North Shore actually come here and offer a class.
I remember that. I remember hearing about all of that, yeah.
Criminal justice.
It was, yep, Intro to
Yeah,
Criminal
this-
Justice.
Right.
So dual enrollment is, I definitely think it has a function. I definitely think there's a certain profile of student who may find more success in it in a certain year. I think it's also tricky for us because we have the waterfall schedule. So when we had the block schedule a few years back, students could kind of build it into their daily life. But here, they're really going to school at night. So I don't know, as a parent of 2 girls, I don't necessarily think that I would want my sophomore daughter on a college campus from like 6 to 9 at night necessarily. But that's just my personal opinion. I think so that
Okay,
adds
so
a whole other level of like logistics, transportation on both students and families. So. Does that answer your question about the dual
I just
enrollment?
was reading it and I was like, oh, how would,
Yeah.
when would I even look into this? And I
Right.
do remember hearing about it at a meeting,
When
so.
we brought them here, it was very successful.
Yeah, it was great those years. And I think the reason why we have the language independent study in there is for other opportunities that may not so neatly fit into this like category of dual enrollment, but that may also be particularly rigorous, whether that's like a Stanford online program or Johns Hopkins has some programs that don't exactly look like the dual enrollment that may be worth looking at in terms of credit and value for the student and the family. So that's kind of why that other language is in there.
Okay.
And I did just want to mention while we're on program of studies, if you don't mind, where did Isaac go? Isaac had mentioned the SAT prep. I just want to mention also that for the past couple years, SAT prep under the math department has been offered. We haven't had enough enrollment, but the counselors and I were just talking about this again today. We're starting to see the juniors tomorrow. That this, it doesn't necessarily answer the English component of the SATs, but we are going to continue to encourage our juniors to take that spring semester of math SAT prep, because I do think that a lot of students will benefit from it. We pull our seniors as they leave the building as part of the sort of like their exiting and their graduation obligations. And last year, 44% of our graduating class of 2018 did some level of preparation for the SATs. We, as part of our counseling to them and guidance, we certainly recommend that they do some preparation, whether it's free or through Summit or through the myriad opportunities that they have online, but that they are doing some level of prep. And I just had a peek; it was 13%, so they did no prep at all, and really wish that they had. So I don't know, there's some information out there to suggest that we could be doing more, but we're going to be pushing that SAT math prep cost, because I do think, if anything, if we look at our numbers, the math looks a little bit lower than the English.
Did we used to do that as a district here?
We
was
brought
the
in an
course
outside
here?
company. Did we?
So the outside companies, there are still some, so because
Right.
of building use, they can still access the building.
Can access, yeah.
And
But there's a cost attached to it.
yes, there is a cost. They do give us a reduced rate for our students for being able to sort of house it here. And some of our students have accessed that. And I can't remember, one of you had mentioned that just having that ease of access in the building, I do think it probably makes it more likely that some students would be able to do the actual class. We publish a number of different opportunities, both free and those that have a cost associated with it. But we did hold a free practice SAT, ACT combo here in December, and I think that was really helpful. So we're trying to leverage as many free opportunities as we can to have them in the building. But yeah, just wanted to answer Isaac's question too.
I just had one other thing. So I'm on the board of the hospital, North Shore Medical Center, and they are partnering with the Salem School District, because this whole great diseases thing is very exciting to me. And so the Salem School District is partnering a way to kind of get kids into like health sciences, and so they're going to have like, whether it be physicians or infectious disease specialists, like come into the classroom. I know in other schools people have like taught suture techniques, and I think that practical stuff is so exciting and kind of gets kids really excited. And so I did ask at that meeting, I'm like, are you going to start piloting with other districts too? So I think they're piloting with Salem, and then to kind of look at, because that course is so, it's so interesting, and I think it could really kind of pique people to go into that role. So yeah, I'm excited to hear that. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So it says review and adopt, and I don't know that we need a formal vote, but is the committee satisfied with the high school program of studies?
Yeah, if I recall, this isn't a formal vote.
It's basically a
but-
support, right?
But that we, a vote to support it. So we may as, could I have a, how do we
Vote of
want to do this? A vote of support? Will somebody,
I'll make the motion.
okay?
I'll second.
So we have a vote of support for the Swampscott High School Program of Studies. I want to make sure I have the date. For 2019-2020. All in favor? And it's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I feel like we need to make a phone call to Salem State.
Yeah, I know, right?
Right?
It sounds like Salem State might not know our demographics.
No, it might not. The next item under my section
Thank you.
is the 1920 school year calendar, first reading. We, I think you've had it for a couple of meetings, and so I don't know that there are any questions concerning it. I don't want to go through month by month. Obviously, we would start in August again.
Was there a change, there was a particular change, I think, that that was holding it up,
The change was,
or a consideration, I can't recall.
I believe it was elementary conferences. And so the other October 30, no, it was elementary conferences that would have been moved to Halloween. We didn't want to do them on Halloween, so they are now, I have my wrong glasses, let's see, November 5th, I believe. No, November 5th, it's November 7th. So there was a conflict with Halloween, the way it landed, that has been corrected for the month of November. We have evening conferences and report card conferences, and I think, let's see, November 5th is no school, that's going to be a professional development day. Evening conferences, 5 through 8 are on the 7th. And then the 11th is no school, and high school and elementary early release for parent conferences, the 12th. That's where that change was made to, because it was conflicting with Halloween. Mrs. Marshall, you just said something about
No, it
a
just,
long vacation
I don't
for
know, it just
December.
looked, Christmas looked really long, but.
The problem is, we would open the buildings for the 23rd.
No, I know,
And
and
then
it's
close
a-
the
and
buildings
it's a
again,
pain.
so
Yeah,
it just happens to be one of those years that we do have a long break.
all's funny.
And we're contracted to have to do the December 20th has to be a half-day, even though we have off the 23rd?
Yes, that is in their current contract, yes.
Okay.
So I say take it back, it is a first read.
Can
We'll
I
put
ask,
it-
I have one question.
Sure.
It looks like there's 8 professional development days, except for 7 for 5th through 8th graders,
Except for what?
except for 5th through 8th grade teachers, because on one of the professional development days, they have professional learning. Is that good? I mean, is
Which
that-
date are you looking at?
I'm looking at December 5th.
December 5th. What do we see here?
Like 5th through 8th grade, they have parent conferences.
Yeah, because
And
they added
everyone
an
else
extra one.
is doing
Yeah, they
professional.
added in an additional one. It was more, it was important to them and important to the leadership at the middle school that they have an additional conference
So
time.
that's
fine.
so no one's complaining about having
No.
one less professional
No.
development day? Okay, I do remember that they wanted an extra one, I just.
And I think they did that this year as well.
I think
They
they
had the
did.
extra day.
Yeah.
So it actually has worked really well.
And I just don't understand what one abbreviation means. In June,
Yep.
it has grade K-12 students/SY staff.
School year.
School, yeah,
Oh,
school year.
just school year staff,
Right, and
okay.
versus full year.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
So add this to the next agenda for a final vote?
For a final vote? Yep.
Okay, will do. And the last item on my agenda is my mid-year. And it is in your folders online, but I also think that I will bring it up on the screen just so everybody else at home has something to look at. There's 2 parts to this. We talked about not bringing in a binder full of evidence, and so I certainly did not do that. Thank you, Bud, I'm all set. I went through my original goals document, and as I had done in the past, I added a mid-year progress at the end. I do want to go through this, and if you could hold questions until I go to the additional sheet that says mid-year adjustments to superintendent goals. I do think I need to make some mid-year adjustments. We've talked about this in the past. I kind of already made them, which is why there's things that aren't met. So I don't want to read this entire thing to you because you're familiar with it, but the first action item under my professional practice goal of communication was to outline a communication plan. I've met with Suzanne and Gargi. I've made some progress, but I would like to produce the draft plan to the school committee in June and make that mid-year correction now versus December. And as I said, I'll get to why I have fallen behind in some of these areas. The survey for communication I shared with you here at the school committee meeting, so you have seen the early results under a superintendent's report and the changes I made as a result of that communication survey, so I feel like I've met that goal. In addition, 1C talks about improving my communication by way of a written report, school committee at each meeting. That has been met. The other piece under evidence in that 1C, it could actually be bumped up to the survey. As a result of the survey, if you recall, I solicited anyone from town meeting, any town meeting member that wanted to be receiving my reports also receives them, so I do consider that met as well. I think I've shared with you that I have about 44 members that receive that. I can just go down, right, Bud? There we go.
Might get more at town meetings, you ask, too.
I will. I really do, because
Yeah.
it's people that don't have school-age children that I'm really
That's great.
hitting.
Yeah.
Some are parents. I know I'm familiar with their email addresses, but some are not. And some are former school committee members who are now receiving, and it's really, they value it. It's really important. 1D was to attend PTO, PTA, PTF meetings and superintendent coffees at the senior center. I am on target with that. I have attendance at meetings scheduled, and what they are forwarding me this year is topics that they want me to cover and questions they want me to answer. So under 1D in the evidence, I will share those documents with you. Each school is specific. When I did my kickoff meeting, which is 1E, that came out of that when I go to their schools, if there's specific topics that they want me to talk about, to forward me the questions, to forward me the focus, and I will address that as well. So that is met. The next one is classroom instruction. I got it, Bud. All set. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Facilitated 2-day summer institute. Did that in July. I attached and linked, I don't know how successfully, the agendas from day 1 and day 2. That was met. Create a schedule for school visits for unannounced classroom observations. Though I've been doing them, I did not meet and set up a schedule. I have them all on my calendar, and when it's a good week, I make it out and make it over there with the principals. Bi-monthly visitations to schools. I've made some progress. It's not as bi-monthly as I would like it to be, but again, I want to talk to you about the mid-year adjustments. The next goal was curriculum and instruction. Conduct an analysis of course enrollments at SHS. I did make some progress. What I had seen is we printed out all of the courses and all of the course enrollments, and Ms. Seibert and I have gone through them. But with the departure of Director of Curriculum Instruction, the analysis piece of that was not formally done. We did it in an informal way. So I would say that I've made some progress in that area. Through conversations with students in grades 7 through 13, I will gather data around the needs and interests for classes. This is where I'm looking to put in 1 or 2 hands-on classes. That was not met. And networking with Essex North Shore and Salem superintendents. I don't know if you see what's going on in Salem right now. That has not been met. And during the FY20 budget process, report out immediate recommendations for the school year 2019-2020. I would say that is met. And the evidence provided during and throughout the FY20 budget process, during committee of the whole meetings and meetings here and budget meetings as well. And even looking at that high school program of studies, there have been adjustments made there, new courses offered, and so I would consider that met. Cultural competency is the next one. And 4A talked about creating a survey. I have started the survey. I haven't sent it out yet, so that would be delayed, and obviously my timeline is off, but I have made some progress. Compiling baseline data in a Google form for 18-19, some progress has been made. Some of this had begun with the Director of Curriculum Instruction, and so in her absence, that did not continue. As in the next item, 4C, the Director of Curriculum and Instruction is a supervisor to the METCO director, and she was really spearheading that, and so that is not met. 4D, meeting with the ADL group of students, I did meet with them, and I have followed their progress and can provide you with more evidence as to the topics that they're training at the middle school. What is unfortunate about this action item is that I feel like in recent weeks, incidences around ADL situations have escalated at the middle school, and so the administration and I have been talking about the fact that we don't know where this is coming from when we have high school kids coming down talking to these kids. So last week was a tough week for the middle school administration. And so what I need to find out from them is how effective are those lessons from the peer leaders at the high school and the ADL students if there's an uptick in incidences at the middle school. So that's just anecdotal stuff. It's nothing to be alarmed about. It's just different. Our middle school is the phrase at our middle school is, we don't do that here. And so it's kind of a shock when something happens that is out of the ordinary. So, and then for E, I feel like I've done a really good job on this. I added in under the action item that not only did I provide professional development opportunities for families, but for students and for teachers in the community. And yesterday, the PFLAG presentation was made to the 7th grade at the middle school, and it was, from what I understand, awesome. It was about appropriate talk, appropriate conversation, how words can hurt. It was about stereotypes, and it was incredibly well received. And as of this morning, the middle school administration had not heard anything negative from parents, and we struggled about whether or not to offer an opt-out, but this is part of the community we're living in right now, and so we felt it wasn't an option whether or not, if we presented it carefully to our students and appropriately and age appropriately, it wasn't necessary to offer an opt-out. And so it went really, really well. So what I'd like to share with you next is also in your folder. It's 2B, and then my mid-year adjustment to superintendent goals, and why some of my, I would say some of my goals have not been met. The first bullet is actually a statement from my heart. It's that what is going on since the departure of the Director of Curriculum Instruction and what I'm involved in is really about the business of teaching and learning. It is about improving practice. It is about educator growth. So it really aligns with our strategic plan and increasing student achievement. However, and it's not going to come as a shock to all of you because you said it to me, with the departure of the Director of Curriculum Instruction and the addition of the EC Essex County Learning Community Grant, it's a lot. There are 6 districts that have received this $25,000 grant, the first year and now the second year. And this year, if you recall, we're matching it. What those 6 other 5 districts are not doing is inserting their superintendent in every lead team, at every meeting, at every event. And as much as the ECLC leadership loves it, and I love it, I really did not anticipate the time commitment that it has taken. I think Suzanne just whispered to Martha Raymond, she is in the same boat with me. It is, I think, we feel like it's another full-time job right now. The amount of emails that come into our email box alone are scary. So, because they're coordinating everything. So let me just go through the other unexpected. So when I spoke to you initially, and Mrs. Klondike departed in November, I felt like there were 3 areas that I could really focus on and that I could really carry those responsibilities. And that was professional development. And as all you have lectured me for years, I need to delegate, and I did. And I'm working with Katie Porter-Roberts, and she presented here a couple weeks ago, and she's phenomenal. Yes. And then I knew I needed to take on the Math and Focus pilot, K-5. We have K-5 teachers piloting this Math and Focus. It's based on Singapore math. It is a complete departure from what our teachers are used to, and I was hearing rumblings that it wasn't going well. So a lot of time, more time than I expected, has been invested in this. And then the social studies curriculum mapping, and I want to say Gary McMahon at the middle school is doing a great job in social studies, really leading this work. So in my naive and overeager self said, those are the 3 areas that I'm going to concentrate on and the responsibilities I'm going to take. The reality that I identified is that the Director of Curriculum Instruction, and I knew this, also supervises the METCO director and the METCO program, the Extended Day Director and the Extended Day program, the Mentor-Mentee program and those coordinators, Professional Standards Committee, though it's only 4 meetings, it's the prep for it. Gaggy, stop laughing. Professional development meetings. So though Katie Porter-Roberts is running professional development and Donna McHugh is the admin and they're doing the yeoman's work, I'm meeting with Katie for an hour to an hour and a half every week. So, because we're working collaboratively on that. The pilot programs, in addition to, we have pilot programs going on in addition to the Math and Focus. I knew in the transition binder we had high school and middle school Spanish, that they were looking at new programs to incorporate into the middle school and high school Spanish. We have the high school financial literacy, and then we have K-8 ELL. So those were all pilots that were going on. There's decisions that have to be made. There are monies that have to be spent or not spent, and so that is requiring a lot of time. And so all of those listed above have also required meetings with the people involved in that. And then the ECLC grant, and I really could be writing this for both Mrs. Raymond and myself.
Oh, my God.
So initially, this grant opportunity was being co-led by Mrs. Condyke and Mrs. Raymond. And then Mrs. Condyke departed, and Mrs. Raymond took it over. And that was a huge chunk. But then, Mrs. Raymond, this next part of the grant, Mrs. Raymond was leading. And I certainly needed to support that. So we had 3 foci that came out of the initial phase, and that is the social emotional learning, multi-tiered support, systems of support, and cultural competency. I am leading the social emotional advisory committee. Mrs. Raymond is leading the MTSS advisory committee, and Mrs. Hunt is leading the cultural competency committee, advisory committee. So we each have about 15 members on those committees, and we need to meet in order to figure out our next steps for our action plan and how we're going to get those things done. I am also on the district lead team, which has required a few days out of the districts, either half-day meetings or full-day meetings over at the Wiley Center at Endicott College, and those are days that were out of the district. In addition to that, they're providing multi-tiered systems of support trainings, which are fantastic. But those are either with people coming here, which is time away from our regular responsibilities, or us going to full-day trainings. And then there's the superintendent ECLC meetings where the 6 superintendents get together and we have our own little...
Who are not at the other meetings.
Right, who are not at the other meetings, who are happy to be there. And then, for example, another chunk of time for us, which is all great stuff for our district. I am not whining. They're coming to visit they're doing a site visit here on Friday morning to explore our Harbor Swift programs at the middle school and high school, which fall under multi-tiered support systems, social emotional learning, falls under all of the things that we're working on. So I am not here whining to you about my mid-year progress on my goals because I'm pretty proud of what we've accomplished. I am just saying that course correction that you were offering mid-year, even though it's March and almost April, I've been doing it. So I am super excited to be involved in these things, but some of the feedback that I did give, they asked for an evaluation after one of the conferences, is it was phenomenal to be actually working with teachers and administrators on this work, but everything I was doing there, I wasn't doing back here. And so I said, it's great to have a superintendent involved. I can be bought into all this from afar if there were somebody to fill my role, but there isn't. Right. And so for now, we have to get through this. And I'm looking forward to the final interviews of the Director of Teaching and Learning because I think we have a couple of candidates that could really, really come in and do a fabulous job. So I hope that this separate sheet didn't create excuses for my mid-year progress, but gave explanations as to why I am where I'm at. And I will field any questions now when my bulletproof vest is on.
Remind me again how much the ECLC grant is.
They're giving us $25,000. We have to match the $25,000. And it's in professional development, which is wonderful. So then we're expanding our knowledge to the people in the trenches in our school. And the timing couldn't be better for me because I had an aha moment at one of the meetings, and that is that our strategic plan, our district strategy, expires in 2019. Therefore, what is my strategic plan going to be moving forward? Well, social emotional learning, multi-tiered support systems, cultural competency, they all kind of continue with what we've already worked on. So it really is meaningful work. I mean, Martha, chime in. I'm not asking for a defense.
We have access to these incredible leaders in the United States through this grant that we would never be able to afford anywhere else. And that's included in the grant. We're not paying extra for that. They're actually Judy Elliott, who was, I think, the academic leader of the Los Angeles school system.
Yes.
Is coming and meeting with our team April 11th to talk about creating the multi-tiered system supports. That's going to be the biggest undertaking probably of the 3, but it is something that's critical to improve Tier 1, which is general ed, education instruction, having a real systematic plan for Tier 2, intensifying instruction, and then Tier 3. Currently in Swampscott, and we are not alone, Tier 3 tends to be special education. That is not where it should be. Increases the number of referrals, and really having this system in play, which will probably take at least 3 years to get it fully established because it involves a lot of things with scheduling and could be reallocation of staffing. It'll be critical. It is a lot of work. As Pam said, I get 3 or 4 emails a day about this grant.
Can I pipe in for a second too? I think a big part of this grant too is it helps build capacity.
Exactly.
It's not building capacity in one person, it's
Right.
building capacity across the schools, across the district, and that's critical.
It is critical. When you figure that each one of our advisory committees are made up of at least 15 people, and those 15 people have critical roles within our district, that's how we're building that capacity.
So I attended the ECLC showcase, and it was really impressive to see these district leaders together, collaborating, so excited. Everybody knew each other, everybody was working together, they were all working on the same things, and I learned a lot. So I see the value in it.
So I know that my job is not to sit here and problem solve, but I want to ask the question, especially as you talk about building capacity and like, are there opportunities for stipends to pass this to build your team and help take more things off your plate?
Our people are receiving stipends for the work that they're doing.
Maybe, what about more people?
There is nobody to fill my role
Vice
right now.
chairs, yeah, there are vice chairs. I will say one, yes, it is hard to add almost a whole other job into your current job. I
Yeah.
will say though, because Pam is involved, I think we are ahead in areas than other districts, and that we, because she
Because it's
knows
so
what's
much like-
happening. We're also ahead in that we have our teachers so closely involved that they also had such input into our plans moving forward, that there's such a collaboration going on now, so.
I think
it
for
is
now,
important.
it has to stay the way it is. What I'm looking forward to is to being able to pass off some of
Yeah,
this.
Director of
And-
Teaching and Learning is where this really should be. This is
Right.
not a special education initiative.
No.
Has actually nothing to do with special education. It will impact
Yeah.
all of our students who with disabilities and without, and that's critical. But the Director of Teaching and Learning is really, this is really where this belongs. But it's really a great experience.
And I'm not, I really truly am not complaining, because they love it, I love it. It's, when I'm there, I'm so entrenched in it that it reminds me of why I went into education. But then I come back and it's like, oh, well, this got done.
It's nice that it carves out time, though, for us
It
to
is.
have these really high, you're talking
High-level
high-level
conversations, yeah.
conversations about education and moving this district forward. If you weren't doing this, given this
And
time,
that's what you're supposed to
yeah.
be
It
doing.
is what I'm
Right.
supposed to be doing.
So that's what I was gonna say.
Yes.
I find some of this work, frankly, to be more important than some of those goals that we had set. And I wouldn't myself mind seeing some of those work
Because she's ready to talk.
So, okay, I don't,
I
when you're
told you
using
so.
the word complaining, I feel like you're being, nobody's, you're
But I don't want it to
clearly-
sound like I'm whining.
No, but Pam,
You don't sound like
you're,
you're whining.
you're the all in, like, you're jumping right in and
Right.
you're taking the lead, which is amazing and awesome, right? But at the same time, you're like, well, I don't want to complain about the work. You don't need to complain, we see the list. But I think what we need to do here, though, is we need to, like, define your dependencies or adjust them now, because otherwise you're just gonna have
I
not
don't think I
met
can
in
change
ma-
any dependencies until we get the Director of Teaching and Learning on
But
board.
then don't we course correct and actually change
Yes.
this? It's
So-
not
Yes.
about you
Yes.
just writing not met.
Right, no,
It's-
but until if that person isn't being hired till July 1, and we're gonna be on schedule for my new goals, coming in the summer to be ready for September.
Like, to Gargie's point,
Yeah.
like, you're right. So we could take goal 3, curriculum instruction, because your main dependency was your
Is the-
director of
yeah,
curriculum
so
instruction,
we could
and just
literally just
get rid of that goal.
get rid of
Okay,
it.
okay.
Like,
what
that-
I'm
I
trying
think
to
that's
say.
it. I think
Yeah.
that's what it's
I think
about,
that's
like
what she
changing,
means.
like, there's things that aren't happening here because there's no one in place to make those things happen. Although, looking at the high school curriculum, I mean, obviously, it's going forward with the team leaders and things like that,
Right.
and changes of the program and
Right,
studies.
exactly.
It's happening anyway, but it's not happening as we have it down
As you
here.
had planned.
No, it's not happening as planned, right.
defined. And really, that's the adjustment, is like taking something off because your dependency is gone.
You don't have that dependency. That's
Right,
not your,
and then-
like,
and
that's
then-
just.
Yeah, that was the whole gist of
Yeah, that's the
why
whole
we sat
point of
down
this,
last
right.
summer.
Not the stress of trying to justify why this isn't done because this
We don't want
person's
you to
not
look at it
in
and
place.
feel bad. Like,
No, I'm like,
And then if you
not met.
Well, it hurts to, that, like, those 6 letters, or 7 letters really hurt, or six.
But I think then you look at goal 4, which is cultural competencies, and why wouldn't you add ECLC?
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, to be
Right.
able to show the
Right.
things that you've done under that. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
I
Like,
know what you're saying.
Why wouldn't
So,
you just
I
change
didn't
that?
do that for tonight,
No,
but
but-
I would like permission to do it for the next
Yes.
meeting. To
Yes.
incorporate this document, the mid-year adjustments, with this document and present it to you.
But we
Just-
take this one, the 3 off the table, we put
Right.
it in a box.
Yeah.
And we keep
Right.
it there for the summer, when
Yep.
you have the actual staff in
Okay.
place to look at that. And then we adjust with what you're doing and how it relates to the other goals.
So I'll work on updating this document, and maybe it doesn't need to come to a meeting, I can just share it with you through the drive.
Yeah,
But-
because this isn't anything we're gonna officially vote on.
Yeah, we don't
This
vote
is-
on
This is
it.
about
It's just
us just like having
understanding.
a
But I think
refresh in the
through
middle.
the superintendent reports to the school committee, I've given you evidence. I think sharing things that way has really done away with that need for that huge binder with all the evidence. And so I think we've made improvements, and,
A couple of questions?
yep,
On 2B,
yep.
in a perfect world, who would be creating the master schedule for the school visits?
I would. It would be me, because, with the principals, or it would be Maureen Karen with the principals. And that could be tasked off to her as the,
To Maureen.
to Maureen, yeah, that could be my dependency for that one.
And then, I think I can't believe 44 town meeting members have only signed up, but to Suzanne's point, maybe at town meeting, could they have like a sign-up sheet
Yeah,
or?
I could.
You know what we could do? We could do it just like the idea exchange where where we had that laptop open and like.
they could just click it.
and
Great
put your
idea.
email
I
and just
love
put your
that.
email. You know, we could have it.
That's a really good idea.
That's a really
Sign up
easy,
for
that's a really easy one.
notifications,
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that. Mm-hmm.
And then on 4D, I mean, I don't, you attend the ADL Law Day.
I do, yep.
That relationship is, hands down, very
It just
important.
disappeared.
But you're also, aren't you on some committee
Yes.
with the DA's office?
Yes,
Yes.
I'm on the North Shore Advisory to the ADL, yes, I am. And I didn't put that down as well. Thank you for knowing what I
Well,
do.
Not just the ADL, but also the,
Now I'm on a subcommittee for the DA,
yeah, for the DA.
working on trauma with children in schools, subcommittee of 2 superintendents.
Where would you put the subcommittee? Both in the stakeholders?
I think it would probably be,
4D.
it would
Would
probably,
that be
yeah.
under social emotional?
It would be social emotionals that we're working on. I don't know if you saw the safety conference came out, save the date for the DA safety conference, and that was a result of the work that we had done, that we said that sexting and vaping are the biggest issues, and that's why that conference is going to be around there. So,
You still, you have I mean, obviously those fillers to put in. and
yes, I do, thank
It's
you.
hard to, especially with the schedule, but you do have other things out there that you gotta put in there.
And,
You're right,
and, and to some degree, isn't some of this work that you're doing, especially with the ADL and with the DA's office, also part of your, communicating and building a network
Yes, it is.
for the district?
I have some
So
great
1A,
CCI meeting in too.
Oh, CCI meetings, wow. what's
CCI.
They're run by the DA's office. We have them quarterly. They're community collaborative initiatives where Martha attends, the principals attend, the guidance staff attends, and they are, DCF attends. And they're to talk about heavy-duty cases within the district and strategies that we're working with families and how to network with families into agencies that they need. So those happen
Support.
quarterly, right?
How to support like our most vulnerable kids.
Those are the most depressing meetings I ever go to.
So I'm gonna only push you on one thing in particular, and it's 2B, which is the classroom visits. And it's two reasons. One, because I think you need to be in the classrooms, but 2, I know what it does for you
I know you
as a
do.
motivational tool
It
and
does.
how much you enjoy doing that.
I
And I
do.
think that it's important for you to have that dose.
Yes, we've talked about this. It is the shot in the arm I need while doing all of these other things. I mean, Martha feels the same way when we are in the classrooms, when I get visits from the preschool kids that come down and they deliberately bring them down to see me. It is like my whole day.
It's like a little antidepressant.
Oh, it's amazing.
Reading the stories that was one of my best.
That was so
days
much
this
fun.
year.
It was,
was
wasn't it? I
really
mean,
fun.
Ted was there. I mean,
That was one of my
Yeah,
favorite.
you really have to
Stories?
course correct on 3, but like
great.
3, you do, like,
Yes.
the whole thing.
okay.
So,
I will.
so
Okay.
maybe, so let's look at that goal, and let's look at that goal and make a modification, like, 4 months left of school, April, May, June, 3 months, like, you know, schedule three visits at least, or
Yeah,
a visit in
absolutely.
elementary, middle, and high, or something.
I can,
Like, let's just
Yeah,
make a,
that's
let's
a
just
great
make a goal there, that you
school,
get to
yeah.
3 schools, or 3 different levels of school, or something.
I will,
You
I
know,
will
like, and
work on
then-
that.
And then you can do it and check it off.
Yep, I will do it.
And then that goal doesn't go away, that's an important one, to
It
do
is,
that whole.
that's what the work is
No, that
about.
But that was all about, you know, standardizing observations and things too, right? That we let fall off the radar.
So I look at 3B also, and I say, like, there's Mr. Kalishman.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I do think, I feel a sense of relief that we recognize goal 3 is out. But I do think I can make some modifications to these, share them with you in the folder again, and move forward for the rest
I
of the
mean,
year.
the goals that are not met, or the goals that are in progress from 1, 2, and 4, you know, just define what they're gonna be now, like
From now
that
till the
goal
end
to
of the
say
year.
3
Right.
visits.
What is reasonable?
Or what's reasonable to
To
what's
expect.
gonna be the new met,
Yep, gotcha.
you know, cause like,
Perfect.
why?
Because if you know you can't meet them now, don't bother, right? Like,
Right.
that's what we need, that's why we're course correcting.
Right.
Okay.
Well, that
Yeah, I
really
mean, I
stuck in
think
my
it's
head.
important that we use this as a tool, not at the end of the year as a gotcha, but as a tool for all of us for.
To get there.
To
But
get
that
there.
was,
Oh,
that was
we need-
our goal for this year.
But we need to get over the finish
Right.
line together.
Yeah,
Right, no, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
That's, right.
Can we take a 5-minute break?
yes, okay. So, anything else for the superintendent's mid-year evaluation?
So you're going to email them out to us?
Yes,
Okay.
I will.
Okay, so before we move into the school business administrator, we're just going to take a 5-minute recess. Gavel us into break, but I'm gaveling us back from break.
Sorry, technical difficulties, my fault.
Uh-oh.
I didn't know that needed
Because
to be
you
done. I got you,
flip
yeah, I see
keyboard.
you. Okay.
All right, Ms. Seibert, our business administrator, take it away.
Call us back to order?
I did.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay. What?
Page 2.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so, first off, I want to thank you all for giving me this opportunity to talk to you about this exciting stuff called policies and procedures. So,
I get
no one,
excited over
I know, I was gonna say, no one gets more excited than Mrs. Wright or me. So we are happy to talk about this. So, first off, the school committee policy manual is available on the school department's website. Our policy manual is consistent with the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, or MASS. So all of our fiscal management policies are in Section D. So if someone wanted to look at other districts, say, and compare our financial policies to other districts, you would look to their Section D if they're in the same nomenclature with MASS. So school committee has a number of policies pertaining to purchasing. This is policy DJ and DJA. And this is important. The nomenclature and the naming is important because if you wanted to look at our policy DJA versus Lexington's DJA, you can pull them up and it's the same subsections. So we have one policy pertaining to payments of invoices. We have another policy pertaining to fiscal accounting and reporting. And finally, we have a policy pertaining to authorized signatures. So I'm not going to go through and read all these slides. I'm going to highlight the big points here. So for purchasing, the big one here for purchasing is the first line there. The school committee declares its intention to purchase competitively and without prejudice. And that really means that we're going to go out and get the best pricing and the best, when it comes for goods and services or any other procurement that we make. If we do it competitively, we should be getting the best price. So seeking 3 quotes. Following Chapter 30B when it comes to that sort of thing. And then the last bullet point here, school purchases will be made only by official purchase orders. That's important. Purchase orders, using munis and purchase orders help us account for our budget. It helps us have visibility to how much we have spent, how much we've encumbered. And it also is our commitment, our obligation. So when we give a purchase order to a vendor, That is our contract. That is our commitment to purchase whatever it is we itemized on that purchase order for that price. And so those are two important pieces of this one. Purchasing authority, this is really talking about contracts. So most of the purchases can be made through the superintendent or myself. The authority has been delegated to us by this policy. There are purchases that have to come before school committee for vote. And a good example of that is the one that I'm working on right now, the procurement for food services. So once that procurement is completed and we have a recommendation, that will be presented to school committee to vote and award that contract. Payment procedures. Again, I won't go through every single bullet point here, but the first one is a big one. Claims for payment for school department funds should be processed in accordance with the regulations developed by the school superintendent. They should be authorized against a purchase order. So if we have an invoice, we should have a purchase order. So, and I'll get into more how you can see that later on in the presentation. Actual invoices, statements, and vouchers are available for inspection by the school committee. You all have the opportunity to review the warrant and review all the bills behind it. I think that's the biggest ones on this one. Authorized signers. This has to do with who is authorized to sign. So a few years ago, there was a Municipal Modernization Act, which when Mrs. Wright and I start looking at some of our policies and what we want to maybe recommend for policy changes, we might want to try and do some adoption of that where you can delegate one member of the committee to sign off on warrants and payroll, and then the committee of the whole can sign off on it after the fact. We're not there yet. And fiscal accounting and reporting, part of that last one, policy DI, is tonight. So the second part of this presentation is to present you with an update on where we are for FY19. So what does this all mean? Because there were so many. So the good news here is that we do have a chart of accounts that meet the criteria for financial reporting that's consistent with DESE. So sometimes people accuse me of talking in numbers and not in words, but we have an org and an object, and our org has 8 numbers in it, and those 8 numbers tell a story. They tell you what building has made the purchase. What does the purchase fall under? Is it curriculum instruction? Is it materials? Is it supplies? So there are numbers embedded in that org that tell a story of what you're buying. And so the good news is that, while not perfect, our chart of accounts does meet the criteria. There's always room for improvement. So that's a good thing. DESE has general requirements for reporting revenue and expenditures, and we follow those. Each school district reports revenue and expenditures as required on the end-of-year report, which I'm sure you all are familiar with. Our end-of-year report is audited by Clifton, Larson, and Allen. We're actually in the midst of that, where we had the draft report last week, and I'm finalizing that with them. The good news is the town and the school both use the same financial system. Some towns don't, so we're in a good position there. And the school committee policy regarding procurement and payments are in compliance with Mass General Law. And it's the law. So goods and services, procurement of goods and services is really governed by Mass General Law, Chapter 30B. Construction is Mass General Law, either 30 or 39M. 30 or 39M. The difference between 3039M and 149, 149 is a building, 3039M is not. So 3039M would be if we needed to build a retaining wall. That would fall under 3039M. 149 is really whether you're building a building or you're piercing the building. It falls under 149. So, knowing the laws and know what falls under the laws, I am MCPPO certified, so I do know some of this stuff. 71D talks about who's authorized. And then the last law that I put up there really talks about, it gets at the heart of what we've seen happen in another community. What can be paid from current year funds versus future funds? And some of the confusion is there are some exceptions. So current year funds, you're supposed to pay only current year obligations with current year budget money. And for out-of-district tuition, you are allowed to prepay. You're not allowed to post-pay. So if at the end of this fiscal year, we find ourselves in an embarrassment of riches and we have money left over to spend, we could potentially say we want to prepay 3 months tuition at a private residential placement. And so we could use current year money to pay a future obligation. That's one of the only exceptions for utilizing a future or a current appropriation for future expenditures. So policies and procedures. This is where I'm probably going to get a little too accounting nerdish for you, but I'm going to go there anyways. So Munis has what's called a requisition entry system, and we're currently not using it. So I have been working collaboratively with the town accountant and the assistant town manager to town administrator, Mr. Mendez, and Ms. Stella, to start utilizing that. So we've been laying the foundation to try and get it up and running for July 1st, and if not July 1st, then September 1st, when the school year-based staff come back. But ultimately, right now, we're using a purchase order system, but we're kind of operating outside of it. So if you use the requisition entry system, you're creating a requisition in Munis. A staff member identifies a buying need, they go into Munis, they type in, I want a pallet of paper, they select WB Mason as the vendor, so they're doing all that work in Munis. Right now, we're doing that in a Google Doc. So we have all the elements. We have the vendor, we have the price, we have the quantity, we have all the information, we have a description, but it's not in Munis. It's in a Google Doc. So I'm trying to transition us to start utilizing the functionality that's available to us in Munis. And one of the beauties of that is it can block a user from exceeding their budget. So, and that's where I'm really working closely with the town accountant to set this up correctly. So if the middle school has a budget of, say, $50,000, and they have a string of orgs and objects that make up that $50,000 budget, they can be entering requisitions, and they would get a notification from Munis saying, hey, you don't have any money left. We can set Munis up with different permissions. We can let them continue to overspend their budget, or we could say, no, you don't get to submit this requisition for consideration. But you can build a workflow in Munis that allows it to go through the approval process. And that's where really I'm working collaboratively with the town to figure out what does that look like. And I'm not just working with the town, I'm working with Mrs. Gorman, Claire Gorman in my department, and we're gonna start soliciting some feedback from other staff members as well who would be utilizing this, so that it's a collaborative with all the stakeholders. And the goal of that is to start using requisition entry, because what happens is a requisition grows up to a purchase order. Once it's approved, it gets converted to a purchase order, and Munis has the ability to email a PDF of that purchase order back to the person who submitted the requisition. Now they have the ability to call the vendor, because they have the relationship with the vendor, and place the order, either through email, and then you have a trail, which is wonderful, or you can print out the purchase order and fax it to them.
And I would imagine this is another way to prevent winding up in a situation like a similar town.
Correct, correct. So again, working with the town accountant and the treasurer to get this to go. One change that I did implement, so when I arrived here in November, I really tried to have a, don't try and change anything for 6 months. Observe, listen, and listen some more.
How's that working?
So far, so good. Goal not met. So I did make one change. And so here's one of the changes that I made. And you may have seen this as you're looking at the warrants. This is an invoice entry proof. We were not printing this out. I don't know why we weren't printing this out, but we weren't. And this invoice entry proof tells the story. It tells the story of every single invoice that's in that batch. And I just happened to pick a batch that had maintenance in it. So I'm not picking on maintenance, but that's the one that I picked. So it tells you the vendor name. It tells you the date of the invoice. It tells you the invoice number. It's not a statement, it's an invoice number. We don't pay from statements, we only pay from invoices. It tells you the purchase order if it's a direct pay. So if you look down this list, you can see the advanced maintenance. There's no purchase order number there. But if you look down to Dakin Applied, you can see 3311922. There is a purchase order number there. So this tells you a lot. Is this a direct pay bill that someone went out and I don't want to say bought it without permission because that implies that they've done something inappropriate, and it could have been an emergency procurement. It could be something that we didn't set up. Advanced maintenance is actually our contract for cleaning. So we never encumbered all the money at the beginning of the year to cover that contract. We should have, because then when we run an end-of-year report, it doesn't look like we have money left to spend. We don't. This money is accounted for and encumbered if you use a purchase order. It provides a detailed line item description and cost. It's consistent with the purchase order and the organ object that it's being charged to. So again, if you read across the advanced maintenance, you can see, and again, I said I talk in numbers, but 404-11006, that tells me that that was for cleaning services at the high school. So this is a great tool. I'm glad we're using it now. I don't know if you guys noticed it in the packet or not, but I'm very happy that we're using this now. So the school business administrator, going back to the finances, I present quarterly updates to the school committee on the current year expenditures. We utilize a year-to-date report from Munis that I develop into financial statements. They present the condition of the school department, actual expenditures and encumbrances, and then I do a projection for the remaining expenditures. So some of my goals, kind of piggyback on the superintendent unintentionally, utilize Munis more. It's there, it's a tool, we're paying for it. We should be utilizing it more. So use the requisition entry in Munis and have the purchase follow an electronic workflow with either approval or rejections. Encumber funds immediately in Munis. Mrs. Raymond and I talked about encumbering all the tuitions for the rest of the year, and so that's on my list of things. Approved requisitions get converted to purchase orders, and purchase orders get either emailed to vendors, and by placing the order, we obligate the district. Are there any questions?
Suzanne.
The audit that we talked about,
The end of year audit, yes.
that's just school that Clifton does, but they do a townwide one
They do
as
the
well?
town as well, yes, which is a benefit to us because they're familiar with our chart of accounts because they do the town audit as well, and so it's a little easier for them to come in and do the audit for us. But that is strictly on our end-of-year report, which we submit to DESE. We submitted it back in November, and it's a list of our expenditures, and it's by category, so it's how much we spent on textbooks and materials, and we report it by school. So every single school has their own tab in it. It's quite an elaborate report. So
Is your goal to have this up and really running by July? Like this whole the system that you wanted to?
yeah, I mean, it's there, and people are doing it now. It's just not doing it in a Google Doc and doing it in Munis. And so we've identified who the users are, and they all have, guess what? They all have access to Munis. I don't know how much they've been using it, but they all have access already.
Is there a plan for some training?
Create yeah.
Yes, so I have some training documents that I created in a prior district that I've already shared with the town accountant. And so I think first and foremost, we have to set up the workflow so that it's ready to implement, and then we can do some training.
Okay.
This is exciting stuff, come on.
It sounds awesome.
It's reassuring.
You'll get
It's
that
reassuring stuff for sure.
So now, unless there are more questions, come on. No.
Really?
Really, I will segue into the financial update. So actual expenditures, this was through February 25th, so I will be getting ready to prepare one through March 31st, which is a Q3 update. Payroll and non-compensation expenditures are forecasted through the end of June. Assumes utilizing that $225,000 from non-resident tuition collected and deposited in the town's general fund. That's one of the assumptions in here. And it also assumes utilizing $100,000 of facilities budget that's carried on the town side. So I'm not sure, back when we were, I think there was a goal or a combined director that oversaw town and school. So the town side is carrying a budget of $100,000 that's related to school facility expenditures. So I'm going to tap into that as well. So those are the underlying assumptions for these numbers. So the adopted budget for 2019 was $29,039,610. As of the 25th of February, we had spent $16,852,000. The encumbered / projected is still $12 million. And then the available balance as of, well, actually, I'm sorry, that's a typo. That should say as of June 30th, I'm sorry. The available balance as of June 30th should be $20,103.
The 225 from the tuition and 100K from facilities, it's a little hazy now since it was a year ago. Was that?
The 225 is what we keep talking about at Tri-Chair, that we're going to establish the tuition revolving account.
Okay.
And so that's what,
So that was not factored into the budget?
On the town side.
As we did last year?
No, so thank you, that's a good question.
So it's in addition to what we've?
It was factored into the budget, it was not factored into the operating budget.
Okay.
We had planned
To our operating budget?
Correct. We had factored it into a revolving fund.
Okay.
That the money is not being accounted for.
But we knew we were gonna have to use it.
But I have the expenditures for it.
and the general government side has confirmed that it has not been put into their budget.
Yes.
It's waiting to be transferred back to us.
Perfect.
So that
Okay.
we can.
Yes.
Okay.
And I submitted a draft article for the town warrant last week. And so I'm finalizing that with the town to get that on the town warrant. So this makes it a little more clear, hopefully, for you. And again, some of this is, I'm presenting it in the way that the budget was presented by cost center, so you can see, so there's a consistency in how the information is presented. So in the administration cost center, the budget for 2019 was $1,685,000. We've spent $1,003,000. We're forecasting another $55,000, but you can see the reason we have $96,000 left is that $183,000 in salaries, that is spread out throughout the cost centers, whereas the previous school business administrator budgeted it all in one cost center and not in the budget lines where the expense is actually going to be recorded.
Mm-hmm.
General education, other salaries includes another 2.2 tutors. Special education, the budgeted staff in the revolving fund is now charged to the operating budget. So we're requesting that transfer of $225,000 from the town to the school department budget. And the reason I wanted to really call it out here is just I want to make sure that it's in the minutes, it's in the, it's being publicly discussed, and I know that it's been agreed to. So it's very clear on this that revolving fund, we anticipated having that money, or we anticipated having a revolving fund available to us to charge these expenses to. Because we don't have that revolving fund available to us, we're charging the expenses to the operating budget, which can't support picking up $225,000 of expense. School facilities, I continue to track utilities and heating expenditures. The town accountant and I kind of put our heads together collectively and agreed on a plan for that I'm going to pull together the bills for this year by school, and we're going to tap into some of the resources on, forgive me, I'm going to say it wrong, there's an energy committee or?
Renewable energy.
Thank you,
Yeah.
renewable
Yep.
energy, thank you. Renewable energy committee. So we're going to tap into them because, as I've said before, our consumption of kilowatt hours and therms, which is the unit of measure for natural gas, is up year over year. And so I'm concerned that we're not getting the savings that we anticipated with our green communities initiatives. And so I really want someone who has more insight into that to be looking at that and helping us with that analysis. So that's something that we'll be working on in the next month or so. And then you can see that I built in the offset in facilities, that town account. That's what's left. We've charged a little bit of money to that $100,000 that's sitting on the town side. We're going to charge more over there. Mm-hmm. And then finally, district-wide programs. We have incurred more expense for the lead nurse this year. The stipend was really too low for the amount of work that she's been doing. So we've been paying her the curriculum rate of $40 an hour for the additional work that she's been doing throughout the year. And our nurse substitute budget, we really have been, and I'm not sure if we just had someone out or if we're understaffed, but we've had excess spending for the nurse substitute line.
Is that ongoing, or was that at the beginning of the year?
I know that when I looked at it, we had spent, in February, we had already spent the entire budget. So I forecasted that we would be on trend for what we had, basically what our run rate was for the first few months of the year. I forecasted that out.
too. We require nurses to go on field trips.
Yes,
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
That will definitely, so it's not just when someone's out.
yeah.
So I will provide a Q3 update in late April, because I think the first meeting in April is too early for me to do, for the payroll to have posted and me to have enough time to do a thoughtful forecast. So I think it's probably going to be, and then we have school vacation week, so I think it's probably going to end up if I can get it done for the first meeting, I certainly will. Otherwise, it'll be the second meeting in April. I will continue to monitor dailies in long-term subs. I should have said this at the beginning of this. Superintendent and I went through and reviewed this line by line. So all of my assumptions, she questioned them, what did you do here? Was I too conservative? So I think we were both pretty comfortable with where my numbers came out. But I wanted to say that she was a big help for that. We'll continue to monitor special education, specifically out-of-district placements and transportation costs and any incremental staff requests. And we'll continue to monitor the budget, and I will alert the superintendent and the school committee to any significant changes. So, any questions or concerns?
I'm wondering if we can break out, not just nurses, but any kind of staffing needs that we might, to be able to tell the difference between substitutes versus, like if we have to hire somebody for, for extras. Just so that, because we've really been scrutinizing the substitute line item. And so to be able to understand where are substitutes coming in because of, sick and personal days, things like that, versus needing to hire extras for, for regular programming.
Sure, I'll have to do a deeper dive on that, only because we don't utilize a software system for substitutes. We do that in-house, and I'm not sure what data. I assume that she's collecting the data that you're speaking about. Do we need a sub because it's a professional development day? Is it a bereavement day? Is it jury duty? I'm not sure that when she's recording that, where she's capturing that data. I'm sure she's capturing it, but where it's being captured, I'm unclear of. So I'd have to spend a little more time with her. And I have
not
yet.
necessarily going backwards, but going forwards to know when it is paid, that, why. I think it helps to understand.
Well, if we know we have across the district 50 field trips a year, so we need 50 days of a nurse, we put that in the budget.
Yeah.
That just makes sense, right?
Yeah.
We can't predict who's going to be sick or whatever, but that's something we can predict.
Right, absolutely.
That's a number we can budget more accurately.
Absolutely. And I think that, sometimes in other districts, there's been a perception that a lot of these substitute costs are driven by professional development days where there's not a highly qualified teacher in front of the class because they're out at a conference. And I just anecdotally, I don't think we send a lot of people out of district for conferences. And when we do, it's because it specifically supports one of the district priorities. So.
I don't want to artificially inflate the number of sick or personal days.
Right.
How are you getting the school facilities, the tracking the utilities and heating expenditures? Like, is that what Tom Prentice and the other person is working on?
You're tracking.
No, so I am. I've developed a spreadsheet that has our contracted prices for, so we purchase electricity from a supplier and we purchase natural gas from a supplier. National Grid is our, forgive me, I'm probably going to say it wrong, our conduit to it. So they're our provider or our conduit to getting it. So there's always a bill from National Grid every month because they're our delivery system. National Grid is our delivery system. Our provider, our source is another vendor. So I've had to recreate a spreadsheet that I used in another district, but it's been a lot of work, and it really is something that I'd love to staff off to somebody else, to be honest. So.
No, I just remember, I used to sit on the renewable energy, as we have a liaison. Ted, are you the liaison right now? Renewable? No? Oh.
Ted, no.
Well, anyway, we used to sit on that. I used to sit on that.
Okay.
And I know that, it's an awesome, they're a committee that actually, with the grants that they apply for, they really are one of the committees of town government that kind of like, I don't want to say productive, but they really push initiatives through. So they're really
Yeah.
interesting to listen to. But I know that when Mike Scola started, our facilities person, he was kind of sitting in and starting to look at these green community grants, and like, he was very involved. So I'm just like wondering who is now that person.
Tom
It wouldn't
Tom
be-
and
Max both go, Tom
Yes.
and Max
So they
both
go to those
Yes.
meetings. Oh, that's great. Okay. So they should be, because that's what he was tracking it too. So when you were talking about tracking,
Yeah.
I was thinking.
So, Mr. Katz has some lovely spreadsheets that has 6 years' worth of data of our consumption for kilowatt hours, but it doesn't have the pricing associated with
Right,
it.
right,
So
right.
it's,
Okay.
it's hard to know, like, obviously whether we're over or under on our budget, it's a function of multiple variables. It's kilowatt hour consumption and it's pricing. And so, and when you look at that, and I think some of this is just trying to brainstorm what could be driving some of the increased consumption. And Mr. Mendez and Ms. Stella on the town side were really, really helpful so we meet once a month
Okay.
for probably about 2 or 3 hours, because we always budget an hour, but we usually spend a lot more time together. And one of the things that they were talking about is, we need to have someone go look and see what's going on with the zones. So if someone is turning the air conditioning on in the senior center, is that tripping air conditioner throughout the building? We don't know. So we were just trying to brainstorm, like, what could be driving some of the consumption. And I know the superintendent had mentioned to me that at a couple of the elementary schools, we improved the airflow, and so some of the systems that weren't working are now working. Well, those use electricity, so maybe that's part of what's driving the consumption. So in any event, it's something to do a deeper dive on. And I'm happy to have someone else kind of lead the charge on that. So.
Yeah, because the
Like,
code
whatever
generator.
happened to whatever happened to the code generator and the,
So that was fixed when I was on
Is
the
that still-
renewable.
yeah,
Still
but
on.
we haven't heard of it, we haven't heard about it again.
haven't
Haven't
heard
heard
that
about
for a
it,
while.
so we're assuming that the code generator's online.
So we.
I don't know
should-
that answer. And so
Yeah,
there's no
I-
reason that
so-
you would know that answer.
I don't know the answer to that, I'm sorry.
No, you would not. I don't even think I've ever mentioned that to you, so,
But
yeah,
that would
So
be
put that
Tom
on the-
Prentice and.
to-do list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is the energy contracts? Are they 2 years, 3 years?
Actually, Tradition Energy just reached out to me to set up a meeting to talk about when these contracts are up and when to go to market to renew them. So I want to say that I think the natural gas one expires in the middle of next year, like March or April. And I think the electric one is for a 2-year. So I'd have to go back and double check that. So.
So I have a question.
The electric one, I know goes through next year because there was budget certainty with the kilowatt hours, but the natural gas was not.
I have a question about the 225 again. Is the plan that the revolving account be approved at town meeting and then they will switch the money into
No,
it?
one has nothing to do with the other.
They don't.
The
So-
money that is currently there is waiting for us to just submit and get that money.
Actually, no, she's right. So the feedback, I'm sorry, the feedback that Cheryl gave to me was to amend my article to town meeting to specifically say an immediate budget transfer of $225,000 into the revolving fund.
And that's
then
how we
we'll-
would
And then we'll
be able to
we'll do a transfer from our operating budget to our new revolving fund.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I just wanted, sorry, I just wanted to understand how we were going to access it.
Okay.
Well, the good news with
That
that
makes
too, and
sense.
I shared this with Mrs. Raymond, that revolving fund, the legal language, the way it was set up under Chapter 71, it's not only for non-tuition, for non-resident tuition, it's also for foster care. And we have a
right.
number of children in our district that are currently in foster care, and that allows us the ability to go back to the LEA.
Capture that money.
Yeah, and bill them back for some of that, so. So this revolving fund will be able to deposit those checks in there as well.
Great.
Wow.
Awesome. Okay, well, we're on track for 10 o'clock because I'm still on the docket here, so next up. Next up, and I apologize, I didn't put together a presentation on this one, so I'm going to go from my notes, if I can pull it up here. And that's where,
Read the letter?
nope, no, I have the letter.
Oh, okay. this
Oh,
is here.
okay.
This is about the
Yeah, pull the letter up.
resolution.
Yep,
It's right
whoops,
here.
what happened here?
This is the,
Yeah, no, I know.
so do you, Ted, do you want to talk to it at all? Do you want to introduce it, or, how it got on the agenda?
So a while ago, before this last Friday meeting, there was some media attention towards funding the Chapter 70 full. And I ended up coming across an article out of Greenfield and spoke to the chair out of the Greenfield School Committee and asked her basically about the resolution, some of the wording. And through the School Committee Association, they supplied what we're seeing on the board here, and then we would tailor it towards specifics. I know Martha has put some incredible work into it. Have reached out to Senator Creighton about it. He was at the State House last Friday. He knows that it's being talked about tonight. I did not hear back from Representative Ehrlich's office. I think she was busy with a couple of other items. My understanding is that many districts are doing this. Out of Friday's State House rally, they also had some discussion on the Promise Act, which I think we all probably got the emails about. And it's just to make sure that they know that we're underfunded, we're active, and I would encourage everybody to reach out to our delegation to realize how important those monies are to us, because if we're making it up in one area, we can supplement in another area.
So I sent an email out to the superintendent, the chair, and to Mr. Delano, and I just want to kind of go over some of the stuff that I shared with you in that email. And again, I didn't have a chance to throw it into a PowerPoint, which I had, but it's on my laptop. So the MTA provided us a link. And the link was to a map of the state that allowed visitors to drill down to a specific district. And once you highlighted that district, a dialog box would pop up, and it would with their calculated amount. So the amount that you see on this resolution of $890,269 is a calculation that was done behind the scenes by MTA. And so I just want to tell you about their methodology behind the calculation. It was based on a simulation by the Massachusetts Budget and Policy Center. The map indicates the additional Chapter 70 aid each district would receive in fiscal 2023 if the 4 core recommendations of the 2015 Foundation Budget Review Commission are phased in over a 5-year period. So the amounts shown are in addition to the FY23 baseline Chapter 70 aid. The baseline is the Chapter 70 aid each district would receive if the recommendations were not implemented. And for about 60% of the districts, the FY23 figure includes an additional Chapter 70 minimum aid, which is not part of the Foundation Budget Committee review. So I hope that made sense to everybody. On a separate note, last week I had the opportunity to attend the Solutions Fair, which was presented by MASBO, which is the Massachusetts Association of School Business Administrators, of which I'm a member. And we were very fortunate to have not only the governor of the Commonwealth, but also the Secretary of Education, Mr. Peisner, as our keynote speakers. And the governor at that MASBO session outlined that he is, part of the budget that he just released, has a 7-year phase-in approach for the Foundation Budget Review Commission findings, and that his approach addresses all 4 areas of concern: health insurance, special education, ELL, and poverty. And I know that anyone who watches the budget knows that this last budget, the FY19 budget that was adopted, the legislature went back and forth on those 4 things, and what were we going to fund and what weren't we going to fund and what's more important than the other. So the governor's budget has all 4 in it. FY20 is the first year of that 7-year rollout, and the governor's budget calls for a $20 million increase in Chapter 70. While it's still very early in the state budget process, it looks like Swampscott's Chapter 70 for FY20 is set to increase by 14.15%, or $529,000. Finally, this is going to sound like alphabet soup, but MASS, MASBO, and MTA are all being very vocal about the need to keep the pressure on the legislature to act on the Foundation Budget Review Commission's findings and implement formula change and fully fund education. I attached a presentation to that email. I can make that public for everybody. But at a MASBO event in October, there was a tale of 4 cities. And there are 4 cities that combined, we're trying to show the gap, the shortfall, and what that really means to those cities and to public education. And there's also a great video on the MASS website, A Tale of Two Sisters. And one sister teaches in Burlington and the other teaches in Brockton. And the disparity between the 2 cities and the funding for those 2 communities is very evident. And it was a very interesting, it's about a 15-minute video, so it's not a short snippet, it's a, you know, get a bag of popcorn. It was very, very informative. So I, per your request, I put together the resolution, and I will turn it over to you guys for questions.
So is this different from the resolution that we did right after the foundation
Well,
review?
this is
basically the same.
So we signed that resolution in 2016 probably, because
Probably.
this is 2015 Foundation Review Commission.
out, right.
So I think we did it in 2016, and the Finance Committee signed it, and the Selectmen signed it, and it was definitely this, like, please fund us based on the Foundation Budget Review Commission's findings, which are these same 4 areas. So nothing's really changed in these 4 areas. No, but this is different now because, you know, it's called the Promise Act, and it's new legislation, right, that they're trying to pass again, so.
Right. No, I'm
so
happy
it's worth-
to do it. I
it's
just
worth-
wanted to know
It's worth
what
doing
was
it again. I mean, yeah, it's worth.
No, it has to be done again. It
Right.
needed to probably be done every year.
I'm curious, the increase, so if it's a 7-year, if it goes with the governor's budget and it's 7 years, not the 5-year, you said.
So this was based on MTA's calculations, and MTA's assumption was a 5-year phase-in. Whereas I was at a meeting with the governor was the keynote speaker at the meeting that I was at, and he talked about a 7-year phase-in.
But you said it's gonna increase our chapter 70 funding by 14.
So the
No,
current, so
separate.
FY20 budget that was reviewed, released back in January had the foundation budget in it and Chapter 70 in it. And our Chapter 70 funding has increased year over year from FY19 to FY20.
Right.
We've gone up by 14.15%, or $520,000, $29,000.
How does that compare to like what our percentage is, like?
So I didn't do a deep dive to see what was driving it. I did look at our enrollment numbers, and I think other than our ELL population changing and our economically challenged population changing, I know I had shared with the superintendent the last time I looked at it, they have tiers 1 through 10 for your economically disadvantaged.
Right.
And even though our numbers went up, our tier stayed the same.
Right.
So I think I surmise that our tier must have changed on some of these, and that's what drove the change in the foundation aid.
The tier, both tiers, or?
I'm guessing that we went into a higher tier. I didn't do
Okay.
the analysis.
Can you, like, rather, I just want to make sure everybody hears everything.
The number, although it seems great, seems high. And I don't know if that's what's in the MTA calculation or not, because when we discussed this back in 2016 and talked to people from the state, you know, they were really, so Swampscott is at the very low end of what our reimbursement, or what money we get from the state. We're right around 17%, which is
Correct.
which is one of the lowest districts, without a doubt. But we also spend much more than our net.
Our required spending, yes.
Our required spending, I mean, we spend much more than that as a district. And so I mean, the districts that don't spend a lot more are the districts that are gonna see the biggest jump in their Chapter 70 funding, is that?
I don't know.
Is this about sort of getting some sort of equity among districts? Because
Well, part of our-
didn't this all come from like the lawsuit from the big cities that weren't getting enough money?
Well, I don't know that they've filed that, but I know that they were threatening to. So I think part of our increase is a function of the budget, the overall pie increase by 200 million.
Right.
So
maybe
you would
that's
expect
something.
our increase to happen, because the pie increased by
bigger.
$200 million.
Right.
So I would expect our slice of the pie to increase.
Yeah, I guess-
Why
I
it
guess
increased
you're
by 14%, I'd have to really
You're right, I wasn't
kick the
thinking- I
tires
wasn't
on that.
thinking the pie was bigger.
Yeah,
You're
the
right.
pie
So
is
it makes
bigger.
more sense.
But in order to ever see that actually come to light, that budget would actually have to be approved as
Correct.
is, which never,
Correct, and that's why I said, I prefaced it with it's very early in the budget process.
Right.
So I don't want to count my chickens before they have hatched, so to speak.
Chapter 70 before it arrives, yeah.
right, right.
So we need to approve it, or what's the?
So I will,
Just before we do this, who's this getting sent to?
Yeah.
Like, who's the audience for this resolution?
I would say our delegation.
So.
I would also say, I would suggest that maybe we'd send it to town manager FinCom as well.
well, so, obviously this has more power, with everybody who is elected signing it. So, perhaps a copy of it goes to them,
Okay.
because I don't think we should not do it or hold it until others vote on it.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's,
Yeah, it should come from the town, all of us.
I mean, that's what I did before.
Well, but do you
I
think
put
we
a
should
pres-
hold it then? Do you think we should
No, I
pass?
think, no, I think we should pass it, and then I think they agree, they sign off on it themselves, and then we all send it up.
Okay.
Otherwise-
So will you, Ted, will you take the lead on it in terms of communicating with the selectmen and?
I'll call Joanne tomorrow
Okay.
and talk to her about it.
So with that, then I will entertain a motion to accept the resolution in support of full funding of our public schools.
Should we read it, or should we just?
I will read it. Whereas free public schools available to all students without exception are foundational to our democracy and are required by state constitution. And whereas all of our students, no matter where they live, deserve high-quality public schools that teach the whole child and provide them with rich school experience that addresses their academic, social, and emotional needs. Whereas the state's foundation budget formula, which determines state aid to each district, has been woefully out of date for years, thereby underfunding our districts by more than $1 billion a year for essential educational services. And whereas an updated foundation budget formula would bring Swampscott Public Schools up to $890,269 in additional state aid each year, allowing this district to move closer to providing all students with the education to which they are entitled as residents of the Commonwealth. And whereas the legislature failed to pass any foundation budget legislation in the last session, leaving districts, educators, and students without the funds necessary to support the schools our students deserve in every district in the state. Therefore, be it resolved that the Swampscott Public School Committee urges the legislature to approve and fully fund a new foundation budget formula by May 1st, 2019.
Can that be on letterhead or something?
Yes.
Oh, okay, because it says free to sign that one, so.
Yeah, but it won't.
Okay, all right,
So-
I was gonna say, like, this
Just to
doesn't look
clarify, so
right.
we're gonna have the committee sign?
I think everybody on the committee should sign. This has just me, but I think everybody should be signing this.
Okay.
So I'm having Maureen redo it on letterhead?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
So
Yes,
I will make
please.
the motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? The motion passes unanimously.
So I'll take that back
Okay,
with everybody.
okay. So please make yourselves available in the next few days to stop by Ms. Karen's office and sign.
Got it.
Okay. Okay, so okay, so we're up to me, and we had a tri-chair meeting last Friday. It was attended by Mike McClung, who was standing in for the Finance Committee, Peter Spelios, myself, the superintendent, and Sean Fitzgerald. We spent a fair part of the meeting talking about the former the position that was held by Mike Scola and how that has evolved and what, if anything, needs to change. It was sort of, I was a little fired up about it, particularly as it related to missing some deadlines for the emergency rehab program with the
Roofs and boilers.
yeah, with the roofs and boilers, and was sort of, expressing that, not about the person who held the job, but in having a single person to hold that job and to act and look at things programmatically rather than in response to issues, that we've lost a resource there. Do you want to add to that, or?
Well, my question, and the town administrator and I haven't talked about this yet, and we actually started the conversation like nobody else was in the room, is that the current model of Mr. Prentice and Mr. Casper was only for this school year. And so my assumption was that we were going to revisit the model and to do an analysis on whether or not we feel like it's working. And so that's where we were at in the conversation. I have, the person that held the position previously spent the majority of his time, and this came out in the meeting, in the school department. We have the most square footage, we have the most buildings, the most systems, and really did a lot of foresight for the school department. I don't feel that that is occurring now. Now, whether or not this model continues and we bring in outside consultants and come up with a plan for that, or the question came up, are we ever going to find one person that has the ability and skills to do all that we're asking them to do? I mean, Gar, you were on that group that we developed a job description that is almost impossible. So I guess further discussion is needed, and I think Mr. Fitzgerald and I have to get together and talk about where our head is at. He is meeting apparently regularly with both Max and Tom. I get a weekly report, written report from Tom as to what his time has been spent on for the week, as I do Mr. Baker, which is something new we started at the first of the year. So I guess that was what the dialogue was about, like, where are we at with this? What do we feel is the best model? Are we ever is one person able to do that job, particularly without a staff, remember? We didn't even give the previous person in this position an admin assistant, which is mind-boggling. So it's to be determined.
It was like a yin and yang, that we're in a position now where it's bodies but no planning versus planning and no bodies.
But so his job description, though, spoke to the fact that for the first 6 months, he was gonna do some inventory and figure out what his budget was gonna be, but he was such a kind of energetic doer that he kind of jumped right in and then started doing. So that kind of deviated from the original plan, which I thought was pretty well laid out with a job description. But
to our benefit, he did some things.
No, and I think it was great, but I also think that we put together a memorandum of agreement so that when the heads change, we would still have this. We spent a year on putting this together, so I gotta say, I was pretty disappointed that it wasn't being, that position wasn't being refilled, right?
Well,
And
I think a bigger discussion, quite frankly, and this is for another time, is that, are these joint positions really working? Having two bosses is very difficult, even though in the current model of the Human Resources Director, I mean, we're both supervisors, but direct report is Mr. Fitzgerald. We're coming across, there's a pattern of issues or things that don't necessarily work seamlessly in that model. So I think there's a couple of conversations that have to occur. I agree with you. It was supposed to be planning. It was supposed to be developing the budget. It was supposed to be, figuring out your staffing. But he came in and...
Almost like a consultant's role.
Right, and he came in, and so to Mr. Fitzgerald's point, can we hire consultants and keep the current model we have? So it's going to be an ongoing dialogue, and we're going to have to figure this one out. But that's a big chunk of the meeting was
And
about.
so we left that really tasking the superintendent and the town manager,
right.
town administrator to
Right.
get working on.
Can we, you began by saying we missed something on emergency or a boiler?
The
or-
accelerated repair program from the MSBA, the roof issue that's come to light at the middle school, that it was on Mr. Scola's radar, but in the current model of who we have both people, we missed the window to apply for those funds.
There was nobody particularly watching it.
So the deadline was in February, and now you have to wait a whole nother year. It was brought up during what was that meeting?
The capital improvements.
The capital improvements, and they had suggested that we look at that, which was a little upsetting to me, because I know that we've been looking at it, we've been
Right.
talking about it, and
We
so
had
it's
been talking about it
unfortunate
way back, yeah.
that we missed the deadline, because somebody, we didn't have that person looking at it.
That was the majority of that.
That was the majority of our conversation, and a little bit about collective bargaining.
How high is that on your totem pole, though, Pam? Because we just talked about all of your, right? Like, how high is that as a priority? I mean, it is high, but how are you gonna be able to, do you have a timeline with the
I
town
haven't even
administrator?
spoken to him since
Oh,
that meeting. It was
okay.
only Friday, but I
Oh,
do think
okay.
that it's in.
Kind of have to figure it out by the end of the year, right?
Right.
Well, and I think that's a good opportunity to bring Julie into the mix.
Mhm.
So now we'll move on to the subcommittee and hear about the SBC update.
Well, I think we started speaking about the idea exchange, and then I can't remember what I started to talk about. Let me just think. Oh, so thanking the people for the idea exchange, and then talking about the next steps, using the information from the idea exchange, plus school committee members have been, school building committee members have been taking tours of buildings. I think we visited 6 different facilities so far.
Wow.
And all this is about getting information, looking at schools around us, or mostly in eastern Massachusetts, that either have sites or configurations or other interesting features that we might want in a school. And so we're sort of looking at those schools to think like, how can we craft the best request for services to get, the best qualified owner's project manager and then the rest of the team. So all this pre-work we're doing is all to get to our next step, which is selecting an owner's project manager. And that's gonna happen between now and July. So we have a subcommittee headed by our own Martha down at the end there. She is the MCCPO certified person that is in charge, that MSBA requires that person to sort of oversee this committee.
A lot of letters there.
A lot of M's.
Alphabet soup.
So super for Martha, 6 other people will be joining her, and they're gonna craft the RFS and, put out the ad for a person and then start the interview and everything. And once we've sort of interviewed people and decided who we'd like, the MSBA, approves that or not. So they're part of the decision. And then once that happens, we really get going, like with the design team, and then really hit the feasibility study running.
Yeah. So I'll just piggyback on that, part of being a part of a professional organization is you can start tapping into other people who've gone through this process. So I've reached out to some districts, Weston and Wellesley, both recently did MSBA projects at the elementary level. So tapping into them, getting their RFP RFP, what they put out for bid, what their metrics was for evaluating OPMs. And the other good news here is that we're not an island, although this type of procurement isn't something that I do every day. The town does have a contract with the city of Salem to help us with our procurement. And so I have tapped into that. Mr. Watkins, who's the chief procurement officer for the city of Salem, has been immensely helpful with me with developing the food services procurement. And he will review this procurement as well, and he'll actually help take the lead on it. So they'll release the bid, they'll post it on well, the one that I'm working on now goes on goods and services, and combis. And so he'll make sure that all the procurement law is followed as well. So it's a backup to me. I know what the procurement law is, but it's another resource that we have the ability to tap into, and we will.
Yeah.
So,
Good.
and as I was developing the timeline for the food services procurement, I've also developed a timeline for the MSBA. So, with the July 15th meeting as the ultimate deadline. But MSBA wants to review the bid document before we post it and advertise it. So, so they're also another resource to make sure they're going to go through our document and make sure we haven't done anything, haven't made any missteps, I should say. The last thing is, while the document for procurement of the OPM is very structured, the MSBA, it doesn't allow for a lot of edits. They do allow for a lot of exhibits, and that's where we really need to, as Mrs. Wright said, we really need to figure out what we want to put in there so that we really convey what the project is and what we're looking for. So, so that's where the committee will work closely with me and Mrs. Wright to get that done and get it done right. So.
Yeah, other than that, our next meeting is Monday morning, as usual. They're open to the public, so 7:30?
7:30, yes.
7:30 at the middle school library.
Come one, come all.
Come on, come all.
I was at, and it was great to have the idea
yeah.
exchange. It was interesting, in one of the rooms that I was in, there were new people, which was great. People didn't have kids in the school district. It was interesting to me that they didn't know that we had some accessibility issues at our elementary schools. So it's still so important to talk about the reason why this is even happening.
Right.
Too.
Yeah. We have the benefit of going to the Andover Bancroft School, which is a new school, and I think one of the things that really resonated, the principal said, is learning happens because the building is conducive to it. So it's conducive to 21st century learning, and that was really, and it was evident as we walked through the classrooms and the way they were structured, and the space, and the learning space, and the breakout space, and it just was really.
All the flexible spaces.
Yeah, flexible spaces. It was just really it was a well-designed building, and that's, I think, the more committee members can go on these type of tours and get some ideas on what doesn't work. The having the electric hand dryers creates so much noise that echoes through the hallways. Like, you don't want them.
We know we don't
so
want
it was
them.
just, yeah, it was just really, really interesting just to hear the feedback. And one of we toured the 5th grade wing, and there was a 5th grade teacher who was still there, and she walked us through 5 classrooms, like marched us through 5 classrooms. Like, look at the difference between this classroom and this classroom, and why did they get upper storage spaces and this one didn't? And so really pointing out some things to us to think about. So it was time well spent. So I encourage other committee members to try and sign up for a tour. So.
Yeah. There's one tomorrow at Revere, new elementary school in Revere. Monday, to visit a 3 through 5, 1,000 student school in Milford on Monday, which is a fantastic school to see.
I'm going to
I'm
that.
excited you're going to that
Christine
because that's going to be great. And then we're going to reschedule the one in Haverhill that's a 1,000 student K through 5 that has 2 separate entrances, like a lower and upper school, just sort of see what that one looks like. Pam, superintendent, myself, and maybe Mrs. Condite visited that one last year.
Is that the same one, that's the one we went to last
Oh, yeah,
year?
and you too,
I
the
went to-
hunking
yes.
school.
The
for that
hunking, right?
superintendent?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was good.
Yeah, so there's a lot of, we're not reinventing the wheel here.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to move into the consent agenda then. Designed to expedite the handling of routine and miscellaneous business of the district. The school committee can adopt the entire consent agenda with one motion. At the request of any committee member, any items can be removed and placed on the regular agenda for discussion. Tonight we have the regular session minutes from February 27th. We have a field trip that Coach Caponegro has entered for the baseball team. We have a field trip for the DECA competition coming in from Miss
Tim Parachuk?
Can you say that again?
Parachuk?
Parachuk. My apologies, Mr. Parachuk. A grant for Metco coming in from Ms. Ogunbona. And lastly, warrants number 1936 and 1938. So I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Are there any questions or comments?
Can I make a comment? Mrs. Cooper brought up a great point about the baseball trip and the use of private vehicles. I have it in my packet, I don't know if it was in your packet, that we actually do have an authorization for transportation in private vehicles, and the valid driver's license has to be provided, vehicle registration, copy of the current insurance policy demonstrating complete vehicle and personal liability coverage, criminal background check, and the waiver form. So all of that was done, and so I just wanted, and if anybody else had that question, that's why we.
Yeah, I don't think it was in our packet, that form, that's why I asked.
Yeah, no, that's good. I just want, and so if you had the question, others might have.
Anything else?
That METCO grant is really interesting to me.
Yeah.
And when it says that the World Classroom display of the
38.
Boston, is that going to be a public thing? Is that just going to be in the school, or is that going to be like?
I'm actually meeting with Ms. Agumbona tomorrow for my update on what's going on. She applied for that grant. I'm thrilled that she got it.
No, it's awesome, but
So I don't know.
So I think a good resource for her in town, like she is Sure, like our diversity.
Yep.
Our diversity group in town.
Yes.
I just think like, maybe they can help get some people or publicize it if it's something open to the public, because I think
I
that
will
would be
find
cool.
out tomorrow. I'm
Yeah,
looking
I
forward to
think
it. Since the last time we met, this grant came about, she applied and got it. I was so thrilled. The opportunity came up and she took advantage of it, so I'm sorry, that's all I have on that.
All right, so with that, I will, all in favor? Motion passes unanimously, and now I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
The motion?
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Motion, school committee adjourned.